pastors. Thousands of Southern Baptists voted in favor of the formal ban during an annual meeting in Florida. NPR's Kristen Wright has more.
Southern Baptist leaders invoked 17th century church doctrine in bringing the initial vote to the floor. The proposed amendment to the Southern Baptist Convention's Constitution specifies that only men should preach the Word of God to the conservative evangelical congregations. But advocacy group Baptist Women in Ministry put up a billboard near the meeting venue that says God calls women to pastor, preach, and minister. Reverend Meredith Stone is the executive director.
While they were hearing these negative messages from the SBC, they would also hear the positive message that God values them equally and that they should be equally valued in the church.
A final vote is planned for next year's meeting. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Police in Amherst will not intervene in ICE operations despite calls from residents for stronger protections. The Daily Hampshire Gazette reports that residents fearful of ICE activity called on town leaders on Monday to do more to protect immigrants, arguing that just documenting arrests is simply not enough. The comments came during a joint meeting of the Town Council, Human Rights Commission, and Community Safety and Social Justice Committee, where residents repeatedly questioned whether the town's policies provide meaningful protections for immigrants. Amherst Police Chief Gabriel Ting made clear that Amherst Police will not physically intervene in ICE operations as they are occurring, even if it would be their personal impulse to do so. He says doing so could impose the town to legal liability. The Dana-Farber Cancer Institute has signed a letter of intent to open an ambulatory center in Brighton. The real estate publication Connect CRE reports the center will be located at 60 Guest Street, right down the street from our GBH building. The new space will include exam rooms, infusion, pharmacy, radiology, lab services, and clinical trials. Officials at Dana-Farber say they're aiming for a summer 2029 opening. The new facility will join ambulatory centers in Yaqui as well as Chestnut Hill. Sports, the FIFA World Cup gets underway today at 3 p.m. with Mexico playing South Africa, and then at 10 p.m. it's Korea Republic versus Czechia. The NHL playoffs, Golden Knights at the Hurricanes tonight. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. Red Sox are off. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with another great Live Music Friday. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. We'll start the show today with an exclusive interview with former U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Rachel Rollins, conducted jointly by the Boston Globe, Shirley Young, and me. It's Rollins' first since announcing she's running again to be the DA of Suffolk County. In November of 2018, Rachel Rollins was elected District Attorney of Suffolk County, getting 80% of the vote, having run on a platform of ending racial disparities and reforming the criminal justice system. She served there until January of 2022, when President Biden nominated her to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. She was then confirmed by the U.S. Senate. 16 months later, she resigned following investigations by 2 federal watchdog agencies. Rollins is now running in the Democratic primary to reclaim her position as District Attorney for Suffolk County against her successor and incumbent, Kevin Hayden, and 2 other declared candidates. This is her first interview since announcing her campaign. Rachel Rollins, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
So, Rachel, why run for public office again?
Well, Shirley, I believe in public service, right? I believe in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. When I had the privilege of leading that office in 2019 to 2022, we were the most innovative and exceptional DA's office in the country, hands down. And I believe we've lost that. We are lacking inspiration, we are lacking leadership, and we're lacking transparency, right? Under my leadership in this office, we had the first in the nation discharge integrity team. We had a community member involved in overseeing officer-involved shootings or excessive force matters. That would have been helpful, I think, with the Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley situation. Under my leadership, we had the first grand jury up in the United States of America during COVID. Under my leadership, I'm the first DA in the nation to have argued that mandatory life sentences for emerging adults, people 20 and under, were unconstitutional, a decision that our state Supreme Judicial Court upheld in the Mattis and Robinson cases. The list goes on and on. We had data and we had written policies. Those things aren't happening right now. We had a 20-year low in homicides. I believe Suffolk County deserves leadership that is innovative, that is not maintaining. We are going back to times of 15 or 20 years ago, and I think the people of Suffolk County deserve better than that, and that's why I'm running.
So to hire you, they obviously have to fire Kevin Hayden. You didn't use his name, but you said we're going back to 15 or 20 years ago. How has Hayden taken the office back 2 decades?
Well, first and foremost, his hero is Dan Conley. Ask him.
The prior Suffolk County DA.
The Suffolk County DA that I met with back in 2018 to say, I'm going to run for your spot. I respect you enough to look you in the face and tell you that. He promptly resigns and then puts up a candidate that he gives all his support to, and we beat him too. But I just believe that we deserve more. Let's look at the...
What does that mean concretely? What is it that we're not getting that...
Well, let's talk about Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley. Jim and Shirley, back in 2022, when DA Hayden was running for office as an incumbent, right, having not earned that spot, he was given it like a lot of DAs are, so nothing against him. The MBTA Police Department went ballistic because of his inappropriate conduct. There was tons of Globe coverage about it, et cetera. We find ourselves right now in 2026. The Boston Police Patrolmen's Association has called for people to run against the incumbent DA because of the way he's handling the Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley situation. There are no protocols at all in this office. Nothing is written down. There is a problem with that, I promise you, when you can't point to a policy to say, I hate you, Jim Browdy, because you said this. At least I can point to it. You get different outcomes every time if we don't have written policies.
So, when you were DA, you were on this vanguard of the progressive prosecutor movement, and you talked about some of the results. But since then, some DAs who embrace this, they're backing away from that. Has your position changed on that?
Well, let's be clear, Shirley, and we love the media, right? But I'm listed as a progressive DA. Progressive just means I'm willing to look and change things, right? That's the definition of progressive. But I'm the DA back in 2019, 2020, 21, and into 2022. Let's talk about Tyler Brown, right? I'm the DA, the progressive DA, that said 10 to 12 years for this person because he does not deserve a soft sentence. I'm the progressive DA that people want to label as somebody who nobody goes to jail. You know who needed to go to jail? Prison, actually, not jail. Tyler Brown, right? Because he had been escalating, et cetera. So I reject that narrative. I agree that many of the DAs that had been listed as progressive aren't still in their roles. Some
of them have been voted out of office.
Others resigned. So the Cook County, elected prosecutor left on her own volition. But you're right. Some have been voted out. Some have been indicted. I'm not going to shy away from that.
Let's talk about your next job. You stepped down. You're nominated for U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. You're confirmed by the Senate. You stepped down 16 months after you took the job, after findings from 2 federal watchdog agencies are released. Let me read some of the findings, if I may, and get your response. Rollins used her position as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election, saying that Hayden was under possible federal investigation to help your candidate Arroyo. Quote, knowingly and willfully made a false statement under oath and lacked candor. You denied being the anonymous source, law enforcement source for the Herald. Ultimately, you admitted it when your texts were shown. You violated the Hatch Act, not only in an attempt to influence the election, but by attending a Democratic National Committee fundraiser for Jill Biden without required department approval and contrary to ethics advice you received. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel said your Hatch Act violations, Rachel Rollins, were among the most egregious transgressions that they had ever investigated. Why are these not disqualifiers for a public prosecutor candidate?
Well, first and foremost, I need to make sure that you understand the difference between administrative policies and laws, right? So the Hatch Act is a law. Laws can either be civil or criminal. I know you're a lawyer, Jim. I'm talking to just
sort
other
of a
people as
lawyer.
well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to ask any more about that. But civil or criminal, right? There were no judges involved in this. There was no process involved in this. So I think when you read from a report where there was no trial, there was no discovery, there was no access to any information, right? The Sixth Amendment allows you to, have access to your witnesses and
You didn't have an
cross-examine them.
opportunity to respond to these
I
charges?
had no information about this. I did not know who any of the witnesses were. I was not told their names, right? I was not given a readout of what they said. I've never received discovery. Jim, I didn't even get a copy of my own tapes of my own voice. They gave me a redacted transcript after we appealed and made a FOIA request for my information. So I want to level set and make sure, and I will answer all those questions, but you are acting as if I was presented with a complaint, got discovery, was able to cross-examine witnesses, put on my case.
Respectfully, I'm not doing that. I'm just reading their findings.
I'm aware, but
are you conceding that? Are you suggesting that none of these findings are accurate?
No, what I'm saying is I need you to understand it is a written report that I did not have access to any information
How about the findings?
What I will say is I contest a lot of those findings. For example, the Hatch Act violation, which is what opened the door for the Office of Inspector General to come in. I did not even know Jill Biden was coming to Massachusetts. My office brought me this opportunity. Why would I ever believe that my office would bring me an opportunity to meet the First Lady of the United States? And it was unethical to do so.
Okay, but how about, do you lie under oath about
I have never lied under oath.
You didn't represent that you didn't know who you were not the law enforcement source for the Herald?
Over 15 times when I was asked a question about that, I said, I need to look at my information and my phone. I will get my information and I will answer that to you. I did not destroy evidence. I turned over voluntarily everything that I had. But Jim, there were multiple people calling the Herald and the Globe, by the way, about what was happening in the office with respect to an investigation. And I was being told by Herald reporters that we are being told you're not going to look into this investigation.
Okay, then if I may, let's flip it on its head. Which of these findings that I read do you concede are accurate, or is it none of them?
No, what I'm saying, Jim, is I would never behave in a rogue fashion without having received guidance from the office. Can I just explain to you?
Well, could you answer my question first, if you don't mind? Okay,
so let's talk about the Hatch Act. I was told, and I'm reading from here, as she has been advised, she may not attend the fundraiser, provide remarks of any kind, or discuss policy or legislation on July 14th. That's what I was told that I can't do. I didn't do any of those three things.
Okay, let's leave the Hatch Act. You use your position, they say, as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election. You didn't suggest that Kevin Hayden was under possible investigation to undercut him and to help Arroyo?
After the election was over, 3 days after the election was over, on September 9th, after being told multiple times they had a source in the office saying you weren't going to do anything, I said, You're talking to the leader of the office. We're going to at least investigate this. And Jim, hold on. Go back to that time. There was nothing happening but articles about the DA at the time releasing juvenile sex victims' personal information. That is atrocious behavior.
So my last question about this, I want to defer to. So of the three things I read to you, you concede that none of them are accurate, legitimate findings?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying, Jim, is you are implying as if I did not have clearance, I was rogue.
I'm not implying anything. I'm reading verbatim what they said, and I'm asking you, again, Rollins used their position as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election. You knowingly and willfully made, these are not my words, they're theirs, made a false statement under oath and lacked candor.
Well, let me be clear.
You concede either of those?
I'm saying that.
You concede either of those?
But wait a minute. Let me finish.
Okay, sure.
I guess you are a lawyer, right? Okay. So, and this is actually what would have happened had my matter been in front of a judge, right? Is I would have been able to ask questions like that. So the Office of Inspector General believed that I was not truthful to them. They the Office of Inspector General is an administrative agency. They can't prosecute civilly or criminally.
Right, part of the
when
DOJ.
when they brought it to real prosecutors, it was summarily dismissed. It was denied. And in fact, they said, we aren't even going to bring it to a grand jury. So I would argue that means that it was not true. Now, the Office of Inspector General is entitled to their opinion. I concede they don't think I was truthful. I believe I was. I will not deny that those are the words there, but what I promise you is I have email after email after email where I asked for permission to do these things and was given guidance. And let me just end by saying one thing. Any of the findings
I read to you true?
Here's what I will say. I concede that that report is incredibly damning. What I'm saying, Jim, is I am also the DA and the U.S. Attorney that has exonerated Gang Chen, that has exonerated Sean Ellis, who was accused of murder, and he was found guilty by a jury. It was upheld by our Supreme Judicial Court. Every motion was denied. And he would look you in the face and has and said, I was innocent. So all I'm saying, Jim, is I will concede it is messy. I am embarrassed. I am shameful. I feel deep remorse for some of the behaviors I engaged in. But I promise you, I had emails from DOJ saying, you can do it, just don't do these 3 things. And why I met with people 8 times for 30 hours is because I really believed I hadn't made a mistake. Clearly, the OIG disagreed, and I do not challenge that at all.
But Rachel, you resigned. I mean, if you thought that, you followed the law and there were no violations, then why not fight it and stay in office?
Shirley, that's a great question. I have had 3 confirmed death threats since I was nominated by President Biden. The first one came before I came into office. I actually told the Department of Justice I will not take the job as U.S. Attorney unless the U.S. Marshals give me a security detail. I was given a security detail. The names of the U.S. Marshal were Christopher Kopak and Ashley Clark that followed me. I had the meeting on the first day, and I had 2 months of U.S. Marshal security clearance. That does not happen. They don't follow U.S. attorneys. When I was DA, I had 5 Boston police detectives driving me around all the time. That's one. The second death threat came in May of 2022, immediately after the Tops massacre where 10 black people were murdered. I brought information forward regarding a death threat with my name on it. It referred to me as the first nigger U.S. attorney. It had an AR-15 on the side, and it said the hit list or the list on the side. I told my office and the U.S. Marshals. They said to me, you're overreacting. It's First Amendment. We know now they were wrong because there have been 3 indictments out of California, and all 3 people have been arrested regarding that charge. The last death threat came on May 5th. 2023, when I was the U.S. Attorney. The call came in at 10 in the morning. I wasn't told until 3 p.m. Protocols were not followed. And ultimately, Jim, myself, I was an emotionally disturbed person, said they were going to come in with a shotgun after screaming my name and calling me a bitch. And when I realized then, Shirley, that the office wasn't following protocols, the marshals hadn't been notified, my life and the life of my children was more important than any job. So on May 5th is when I decided I was not going to work there any longer because my life and my children's life is more important than any job or my ego or people questioning my character. You have a copy of the document that I forced my office to fill out. You are welcome. I've redacted out the names of people, but 3 confirmed death threats, not of I don't like you, that I'm going to kill you, right? And we have active DOJ cases right now that I'm a victim in. So it was exhausting. And more importantly, Shirley, it was deeply hurtful to me that people that had met my children, right, who had pictures, Victoria drew them on the wall. When I said about not only first nigger U.S. attorney and that threat, but also the second threat almost a year later, I was told I was exaggerating, and I was told that it was not that big of a deal. And that was so hurtful to me that I said, why am I fighting to stay in a place that does not care literally whether I live or die? So that is why I resigned. And of course, Shirley, you know, it wasn't great having an OIG and OSC investigation either, but the reason I stopped was on May 5th. And I started moving things out of my office, my personal belongings, That was a Friday. On Monday, Senator Cotton sent a second letter saying, I hear you're moving things out of your office. I want an investigation into that and someone else in your office. And the DOJ swarmed together to protect that person, and I left.
Why are you not worried this is going to happen all over again if you're elected to be the Suffolk DA?
Well, first of all, when you're the Suffolk DA, I do want to end that story, Jim, that the Boston police on May 5th were exceptional, right? I was also told by my office, not that the marshals will help me, but don't you know people at the Boston police that you can call? That's not the protocol when somebody's life is threatened for the Department of Justice. But I did call them. They were exceptional. They had round-the-clock people checking my neighborhood.
You feel safer in this
For
position?
sure,
Okay.
I feel safer in that position. And also, Jim, people don't get to, you know who people aren't threatening to kill? Individuals that don't make change, right? If you're mediocre, nobody's threatening to kill you, right? Because you aren't effectuating change. You aren't calling into question things that are troubling and problematic. So, look, I will own that this entire situation when I was U.S. Attorney was incredibly messy. I feel profoundly embarrassed. I feel shame, like remorse about what happened. But what is important to me is for you to understand that DOJ policy allows me as the U.S. Attorney to do these things, and I believed I had the authority. Now, whether the people of Suffolk County buy that or not, and then let me just end with, I'm not saying spare me your righteous indignation, but I had breakfast with a girlfriend from Maine yesterday who voted in the election. And we have Plattner that just won, who is a Nazi, a racist, sexually harasses his interns. And, the New York Times can gently say, had some weird word. He's a sexual harasser in a superior position. And our own governor has said, he's repulsive. I endorse him. So there's righteous indignation that's happening that, that doesn't mean I shouldn't be held accountable. But there are people that have engaged in conduct. By the way, our own current DA has a state ethics violation, a $5,000 fine for leaking juvenile female sex victims' information to win an election. That is repulsive.
He admitted to that, by the way, as part of the fine thing.
Yeah,
My understanding
exactly.
is he did,
and so make sure he is asked about things like that.
Would you vote for Plattner if you were a Maine resident?
That's a really good question. I don't think I would. Right? And I'm not saying it's an easy choice, Jim, but what I want to say is certain people are allowed to be racist, anti-Semite creeps, right? And as long as your wife is but he's my creep, I don't know, right? It's just, some of these things before used to be non-starters, and now we're in a world where they aren't, right?
Would this have happened to you if you were not a black woman in your estimation?
I don't know, Jim. I will leave that for people to understand. Here's what I can say. I think the calls were coming from inside the house, but I also know that, I didn't...
I don't mean the death threats. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I mean the investigations and the findings. Would they have not happened if...
I don't know, Jim. What I promise is I look back at it, and there are still so many things with all of this, right, that I am so proud of regarding the time that I spent there, that I still have a deep love for this office that for 5 years taught me how to be a lawyer.
Why don't you, we only have a minute left, why don't you tell us what you're most proud of in the final minute if you can?
Oh my God. Okay.
So,
Gang Chen case, Baptiste Bonsi, Yanjing Chen, and the Bissereth cases, where our office, I think, made egregious mistakes and misconduct, and I think we delivered justice by dismissing those cases. I am most excited about a human trafficking unit that I was told by virtually everyone in the office we didn't need. It is a 4-person full-time office, the only one of its kind and the first in New England, and it is now currently the busiest human trafficking unit in the United States of America. We don't need to be proud about that because it's too much human trafficking, but obviously we needed that there. I loved my letters to Quincy and Everett that I think mattered, calling out, ADA violations and Title VII violations. I'm just so proud of the work that we did. We increased diversity. We hired more veterans. We did tremendous work. And I'm really proud of the things the office is doing now.
I mean, given what happened, though, with all the ethical violations and the Inspector General, there was a trust that was broken. How can voters trust you again? And how do you keep people's trust?
You literally have 1 minute.
For sure. Shirley, what I would say is the OIG report, the title of the OIG report is an investigation of alleged misconduct by the United States Attorney Rachel Rollins. I didn't choose the word alleged, they did. There have been no findings. But I will also say your current DA has a state ethics violation that was so egregious that he had to pay a $5,000 fine. There's only one other candidate in the race aside from me. Neither one of us have ever had to pay a fine for anything. I will work hard to regain the trust of the people of Suffolk County. And I believe I am even more qualified today than I was in 2018 because I've done the job, I've proven that I can do the job, and I have all the knowledge of being U.S. Attorney as well.
Rachel Rollins, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, both of you.
Thanks.
Jim and Shirley's interview with Rachel Rollins, that's what you just heard. You can check out Shirley's additional reporting on the Globe at bostonglobe.com/newsletters/power-play. And Jim will read you Kevin Hayden's statement in response to this whole situation. Chuck Todd is next.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, one Hollywood legend, one famous brownie recipe, and one very determined James Beard award-winning baker with a spreadsheet. Dorie Greenspan, longtime baking authority, joins us on Katharine Hepburn's much-debated brownie recipe, with clues from Fannie Farmer to the New York Times to Hepburn's own handwritten copy. Will the real Hepburn brownie be revealed? That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Harvard Museums of Science and Culture. 4 museums a short walk from Harvard Square, with exhibits ranging from stunning glass flowers to ancient Egyptian mummy cases. Learn more at hmsc.harvard.edu. And Hunter Higgs LLC, presenting Black Cat, a new play by Dan Hunter, a drama exploring science, Parkinson's disease, memory, and discoveries of the soul. June 18th through June 28th. Ticket information at bostonplaywrights.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow. Before we get to our next guest, a quick note. GBH News' Katie Lannon got this comment from current DA Kevin Hayden's campaign in response to the interview that Shirley Leung from the Globe and I did with Rachel Rollins, you just heard. Rollins, here's what Hayden's campaign said. Rollins lied to federal investigators under oath, lied to and misled her own staff, lied to the public, and was eventually forced to resign in disgrace. The idea that she thinks the absence of a fine excuses her conduct when federal investigators found that she engaged in the most egregious misconduct they'd encountered is ridiculous. By the way, we will invite both Rollins and Hayden to join us together in the next few weeks. Here now via Zoom, political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, now host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, host of the Chuck Toddcast. You can find that at thechucktoddcast.com. Co-host, and I say this already, no, the new podcast on Astic, and most importantly, a man who has often echoed these infamous words.
I love the inflation.
Exactly, he does. Here he is, Chuck Todd, who loves the inflation. Hi, Chuck, how are you?
Yeah, I love the inflation when it's like a paycheck or it's a retirement account. That's where we like the inflation, not at the grocery store.
So does he just goof when he says things like this, or is he just trying to, is this a death wish for his fellow Republicans in November?
Well, did you see the other one where he said he loved the debt?
Yeah, love the
and
debt.
He was like excited that, because everything in the Trump era is bigger, even the debt, right? You're like, I think in his own way, the truly cynical part of my brain goes to, we got a new report from Pew this week that really helped narrow down who is the core Trump base, and it's 21% of the country. And I think he's talking to those folks who will just believe whatever he tells them, right? Type of thing. They're going to accept the premise of whatever he tells them. I guess that's what he's doing here. And just like, okay, I can't deny the fact, so let me make the fact that seems bad good. Inflation's good. Wait till you see what we can do with the Iranian oil with inflation. The debt is good because, hey, it means we're building stuff, right? Like, that's the only semi-rational motivation I can come up with.
Well, other than the fact that he's mentally ill, which I believe he is.
Well,
and no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I know people don't like to talk about it, but I think he's He's got.
I think here's what I really think he is, because this is what I think happened, what you saw with Kristen. And it's what all of us have ever experienced if you have somebody in your life that's in their late 70s, early 80s.
You talk about the Meet the Press interview.
Yeah.
The Meet the Press interview, which is because it's clear he doesn't have impulse control. He's less impulse control today than ever. And it's always, how we always laugh like, wow, grandma said the craziest thing, right? Or grandpa said he has, whatever. He's a man that didn't have a lot of impulse control, but the difference between first-term Trump and second-term Trump, we didn't know there would be much. In this case, there is, right? Like, first-term Trump at least understood how to fake it. Second-term Trump, the fake it filter's gone. And I think that's what we're seeing. And, he's irritable. He's older. Everything's going bad for him. Nothing's going well. So, yeah, he can't put on a brave face. So it's either make the bad feel good, or like he's doing with I love the inflation, or just snap at people.
I've never asked you this question, which I can't believe, but it just occurred to me in all this time. Mm-hmm. Every time I leave a job, I'm hoping my successor does well, but not too well. Kristen Welker, I'm serious, is your successor. How are you with her? How are you two doing?
Oh, I mean, I want her to succeed and do better. I want that show to be stronger. I always said this. My job was to hand the show off better than I received it. I believe I accomplished that job. And her job is to do the same thing.
Well, you're a better man than I, Chuck Todd, that's for sure.
No, I mean, and look, she's got a more challenging time here in some ways than I did, right? With the fragmented media ecosystem and all of that. And so, look, I left her a lot of tools to use to keep Meet the Press relevant beyond Sundays. The unfortunate part for her is that the current network leadership doesn't seem to be supportive of expanding the Meet the Press brand in a ways that I think would make it more durable. They've sort of retreated a little bit. I hope they change their mind.
We're talking to Chuck Todd.
So you just talked about Trump, like the grandpa with the poor impulse control. So is that why he's bombing over in Iran again? Is it poor impulse control?
It's the same thing. He can't get his way. Here's the biggest problem he's got there. And he's got the man who loves to talk about Trump derangement syndrome. The original virus that Donald Trump has politically is Obama derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
And so he every time he's gotten close to a deal with Iran, somebody whispers in his ear who doesn't want to see a deal with Iran, right? Like, and this is a case where he really actually has competing influences. It's rare, but on this issue he does. You have there are people in his orbit that want him to cut a deal, and there are people in his orbit that want him to, quote, finish the job.
Like who?
So
Lindsey Graham.
Well, I think, you got your Lindsey Graham. Okay. I think you've got your people like Mark Levin.
Okay.
People, it's Bibi Netanyahu, right? It's that world of people. So it's big donors too, right? Your Miriam Adelsons, things like that. And so I think what happens is every time he comes close to getting a deal, somebody whispers in his ear, that's just like Obama's deal. In fact, Obama had a tougher deal. Obama had that, and it's how he just sort of blows it all up, right? He doesn't want to give direct money to the Iranians because that was such an important talking point for him when he stupidly ripped it up the first time, which now I say stupidly because I'm not going to, back then I wasn't 100% convinced whether it was a good or bad idea to do what he did. It is plain obvious now among the dumbest things he could have done in his first term. So we know for sure it was a gigantic mistake. They're close to a deal, but he can't accept the premise that his war was a disaster. His war handed the Iranians more leverage. There are realists around him that know this and just like, get out of this mess. Cut the deal, write a check, because that is it's basically what you have to do here. Open the strait and let's settle down this economy.
If they even open the strait, I mean, that's the other thing that you think, are they going to open the strait, go back to where they were? I think he could wind up with a much worse situation.
Oh, I think it's inevitable. He has to cut a worse deal than Obama did.
Yeah.
And it's all his own fault. And this is what makes this. One of the points I made today is that, look, whatever I don't think it's something he should have started. But here's what you can't do. You can't do it half-aid, all right? I'm not quite sure what the rules are.
You're
here.
allowed to say that. It's okay.
All right.
Feel free.
You can't half-ass it. And, Donald Trump's entire life has been about half-assing it, right? Because how else do you bankrupt a casino if you're not really, I mean, I still like that to me. Like, what if you can't make money at a casino? You shouldn't be allowed to touch money. So he half-assed everything, and he half-assed the Iran war. He thought, I can bomb my way to what I want with airstrikes. I don't have to get my hands dirty. In this case, hands dirty is ground troops, and if he was, you couldn't. Iran, you could half-ass Venezuela, and you might be able to half-ass Cuba. There was no half-assing Iran, and he chose to do it anyway, and he actually made it worse. And now he's in a worse situation.
Tony, Chuck Todd. Chuck, we've talked to you about Graham Plattner quite a bit. He wins 70-something% of the vote in the primary. He's the Democratic nominee. Putting aside for another day whether he can beat Susan Collins or not, whether he wins or not, it seems pretty clear that a lot of Republicans are going to try to hang the sins of Graham Plattner and his endorsement by so many Democrats around the necks of those Democrats. Will that work? Is that a potent weapon for the Republicans?
Has it worked for Democrats to wrap Trump around the neck of people, right? As effective? Has that been that effective? It can be effective in a presidential, maybe. I don't think it's effective. I don't think, hey, Iowa, right? Are you outraged by Graham Plattner, this guy from Maine?
Yeah.
Like I did, well, put it this way. I don't know how the Republicans think if they find a viable way to sell that, it means Ken Paxton can be hung around the necks of every Republican running around the country. I actually don't buy it.
Well, but it's I guess the argument would go.
I don't
and
think
I'm not
it
sure
will.
I buy it. Is that you can't be saying that Trump is X, Y, and Z, even though I think it's a million times more egregious. At the same time that you're saying go vote for what this guy has even admitted.
But every hypocritical argument you make about the Democrats, it's literally like, it's a boomerang on the Republicans.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't see how it helps. Here's what that does. That turns you do that if you want to try to stifle voters. If you want to just sort of turn voters off from voting. It might be an effective message if you're just trying to get certain constituency groups not to vote. Maybe.
This whole conversation has driven me insane because to me, from a lot of what you read about the people up in Maine, they think he's kind of a bum in many ways too.
They made a decision.
They're thinking to themselves, if Maine doesn't get a Democrat, it is very unlikely that the Democrats will get the Senate.
That's what Governor Healy told us the other day. She was disgusted by his behavior, but she supports him.
I said this the other day. To me, we're in a 8-alarm fire here. Yeah. We've got 2 more years. We've got a guy that could put 2 more people on the Supreme Court, and then we could be sunk for the next, till next 50 years. It's about getting rid of Trump, putting some reins on Trump in the last 2 years. I mean,
you're echoing though that Flight 93. Remember the infamous Flight 93 essay? Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, not the essay.
2016.
What's the essay?
No, it was so the essay was written by folks on the right who didn't like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And you said, look, it's too important. Stopping Hillary Clinton and the Democrats is too important. You're going to have to look the other way. You're going to have to hold your nose. This is, it's like, be like the folks on Flight 93. They knew they were already dead. They just decided they were going to prevent other people from dying, right? This is
yeah, but come on, Chuck.
Oh, I'm just
Hillary
telling you.
Hillary Clinton, you may not have liked her. You may have thought of horrible things, but this is like an emergency, isn't it?
Here's the thing.
What?
That's what the right thought in 2016. Okay. I'm not telling you. I am sympathetic to your argument here. That's not the point. I'm just saying, I think that mindset in politics is why we have a system that nobody likes at the moment, why politicians on both sides are distrusted. They're all corrupt. How do we know this? The parties always look the other way at their own corrupt people. They, and then they point out the other side. You know what I mean? Like, I just think this is very damaging long term. I know I'm not going to sit here and say it's an 80-20. I think it's a 51-49 call on Plattner.
Yeah.
All right. I do. I don't think we fully appreciate the unintended consequence of a Plattner victory on how that reshapes the mindset of electorates, how that reshapes the mindset of Democrats. It's just like we saw Trump's success reshape the minds of the Republicans, reshape the minds of what was tolerant and what was intolerable. I'm just saying that road that we don't know we're going down here may be a lot bumpier than you might imagine.
Speaking of Republicans' minds, the quote Dan Quayle, what a waste it is to lose one's mind or not have a mind at all. How true that is.
Yeah.
So before we go here, Dynastic, the most recent
I love the misunderestimated.
Oh, my God. Every part of it.
Yeah.
I misspelled on the air potatoes the other day, by the way. So talk about humiliating and Quayle. So with Dynastic, I think the most recent one is about the Warriors, right? Golden State Warriors. So speaking of the NBA, last night, for those who I assume everybody knows, greatest comeback in the history
Spoiler alert,
of
if you don't know.
the NBA Finals. They're down 29 points. The Knicks are. They win 107 to 106. Mr. Dynastic, Mr. Co-host of Dynastic, does the losing team ever, I don't mean just in this series, ever recover from a moment like last night? That seems to me to be so devastating in every one of your corpuscles that it never leaves your system, no matter what it does. Am I making it?
The only thing I would say is, this series is the only difference in this series is youth, right? And experience. That's what feels like, right? Basically, the Spurs are the better team. The Spurs have the better players. You can feel it. You can see it. They are younger. They're everything. The Knicks have the smarter players, right? Meaning, like, they've been there before. They kind of know. It's like in the world of pickup basketball. I remember when I was in my 20s, and you'd play a pickup game that had some 40 or 50-year-old in it, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to run this guy out. And then that guy knew every little trick in the book. Knows, like, Brunson just strikes me as the 50-year-old guy who knows, never misses a shot. He knows he's like the pool shark that knows every bounce that will carry him off into the hole, right? That's Brunson, right? He's like, you can't, the guy, every shot that goes up, you're like, well, it's going to go in. I don't know how it goes in, but it's going to go in, right? I look at that as experience. And the one thing I'd say, if you look back at history and sometime, and as an old guy here, I wonder if you feel this way too. I'm kind of glad that experience still counts for something. Had the Spurs won without this, right? Had the Spurs won without having to, take a punch to the face, right? Michael Jordan had to lose playoff series before he could win, and you just, so did Shaq, and so did Kobe, and so did LeBron, right? LeBron got swept the first time he was in the NBA Finals. I'm kind of glad that you kind of, need to be punched in the face to understand what it's like to do this. It probably, I know this is going to sound old mannish of me. It builds character. But it does build character. And by the way, the Knicks, they have so much character. I will say this. There's one thing, and I'm curious if you Bostonians feel this way. Look, I don't hate this New York team the way I normally hate most New York teams, which I'm sure Bostonians
30 seconds.
feel this way.
Go ahead.
But the fans are getting on my nerves.
Oh, I don't want to see another celebrity. I can't.
I can't.
Okay,
yeah,
we're in agreement.
I can't. I like Brunson, but I can't.
I feel exactly the same way, and he's only 6'2". Hey, good to see you, Chuck Todd. Be well.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
See you.
We're speaking with Chuck Todd, national political commentator, coming up after this quick break.
Chuck loves the inflation, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that.
He loves
inflation.
That's right. That's what he said.
And the debt, the huge debt. I love the debt.
It's Sunday night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, host of the Chuck Toddcast and co-host of the new podcast Dynastic, and a man, as we said, who's fallen in love with inflation just like the president. Andrew Cabral's up next. She's going to talk with us about some Supreme Court decisions coming up. This is Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When we look back at the American Revolution, we're not just looking at history. Each story reveals how a young democracy struggled with questions that still echo today. When we look at our past, we uncover what remains fragile now. Discover our series From Colony to Commonwealth at gbh.org/America250.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at MOS.org. And Burton's Grill and Bar, featuring a scratch kitchen where each dish is customizable for those with food allergies or restrictions. A gluten-free menu is also available. Details on their allergy protocols at burtonsgrill.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're on tape on Wednesday of next week, so it won't be at the library. It's our annual staff retreat, back on the air on Thursday. Joined now on Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea's former sheriff of Suffolk County, former secretary of public safety for Massachusetts. Hey, Andrea.
Hey, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
You
Hi,
okay?
Andrea.
What's with the voice? You okay?
Yeah, I'm just hoarse. I had a procedure
Oh.
on my vocal cords.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry. I didn't.
I'll soldier through.
Okay. Well, I hope you're okay.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea Cabral, coming in even in adverse circumstances. So let's talk to you about a few big cases that are coming down from the Supreme Court. Let's start with birthright citizenship. Do you have a prediction there?
The only reason that I'm hesitating is because the answer should be, of course, they're going to uphold birthright citizenship. Of course. I'm not sure that they will. Just because they haven't followed precedent. Up to this point, they haven't upheld the Constitution. So I've sort of lost all faith that they'll do it in the birthright citizenship case.
By the way, we should be clear. These decisions that we're going to ask about. All the decisions are going to come down in the next several weeks, probably by the end of June, maybe the first week of July. And we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about the biggest of them with Andrea Cabral. Let me just read. This whole birthright thing is based on language that every single court, correct me if I'm wrong in this matter, has ruled against the Trump administration, but now it's for the Supreme Court. Here's the Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. I mean, it's about as unequivocal as any line in the whole damn Constitution, right?
It's extraordinarily clear. And as I said, one would think this is a no-brainer. It shouldn't have even gotten to the Supreme Court. That's how much of a no-brainer it is. But what we've seen over and over and over again with this particular court is that they have turned the stability and the reliability on what is constitutional and what is not on its head. So while I'd like to think that there is a line that they will not cross, I can't say that I genuinely believe that. And I think it's possible that they will not uphold birthright citizenship, despite the fact that the plain, as you point out, the plain language of the Constitution gives all persons born or naturalized the right of citizenship.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral. We're just going to mention a couple of these cases. This next one, I'm assuming most people are going to go to sleep listening about whether or not Trump has the power to fire commissioners from independent federal agencies. Who cares? What I read about this morning, which I wasn't aware of, he obviously wants that power. Every Supreme Court decision on this issue through history has said the president does not have the power except for cause. But every analysis I've read said the Supreme Court once again is going to reverse precedent and give Donald Trump that power. Why should the average person care that whether the president has the power for no cause, just because he or she wants to fire a commissioner from an independent federal agency? Andrea Cabral.
Well, we talk about this a lot on this show, about checks and balances and the importance of federal agencies like the Federal Trade Commission or the Fed, the Federal Reserve, having the independence from the federal government is a critical part of the check and balance system that checks the power of the executive and the legislative branches. So the other part of this that is so deeply troubling is the Supreme Court used to be eternally mindful about the fact that their decisions would last beyond a single presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing here with this Trump's majority, and they are Trump's majority, is that they seem to be making rulings that benefit him directly and now, without regard to who might become president in the future and how it might be abused. I mean, they can actually see that it'll be abused right now by him, but beyond that. And I think that's the problem. And people should care about that because these agencies, particularly agencies like the Federal Reserve, but also the Federal Trade Commission, they make huge decisions that ultimately impact people's pocketbooks. They impact what you pay for certain goods, services, mortgage rates. It makes a difference. Who is on those commissions and boards, and their independence to act beyond the whim or the benefit of a single president.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral with a strained voice, needless to say.
I'm sorry, it's difficult to understand me. I thought
No, it's fine. I just feel bad for you, but we hear you fine.
What about trans bans in sports? This is for trans athletes playing in sports in which there is not, in the gender that they were not born.
This can be brief. This is going to be over. I mean, they're clearly going to rule for the states that have banned.
Well, I said before to Jim, this could be very tough for those trans kids, but very good for the Democrats because this is a very difficult, I mean, this is an 80-20 thing.
I mean, because it takes the issue off the table, theoretically.
Well, I don't know if it takes the issue off the table, but I think that many people want full rights for trans people in general. They're not, it's an 80-20 thing on trans athletes. So that's why I think it could be a good thing for the Democrats, even though it'd be heartbreaking for a lot of these trans kids.
Well, these are cases that are coming up in both Idaho and West Virginia. Essentially, Title IX, which we all thought up until recently that we all understood what Title IX meant when it said that you cannot discriminate against someone in an education program on the basis of sex. And these cases from Idaho and Virginia basically say, except for transgender people, without bothering to really enumerate the basis on which you should be able to discriminate beyond saying that it may give certain athletes an advantage in women's sports. I still don't get the proof of that, what they put before the court to prove that. But I agree with Jim. The short answer is I agree with Jim. I think they'll uphold the bans.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral. Again, those decisions will come down in the next several weeks, and we'll obviously talk about them on the day that they do.
So, Andrea, there was a story. People know about the public defenders. They have a much more, what is the long title for them? The commission.
CPCS.
Yeah, CPCS.
Committee for Public Counsel Services.
The kind of, there's always an argument about they're not being paid enough, and the lawyers wouldn't work for a while, and the people were, the cases were held up in court. But this report on them from the State Inspector General is very critical. What did you think?
We should clarify, though, there are two sets.
And
you can explain that to the public defenders who don't do the majority of the criminal representation of indigent people and private lawyers who do. But go ahead, Andrea.
Right. In Massachusetts and in a number of other states, the public defender's office is separated into public defenders who work for CPCS and bar advocates. Bar advocates are private attorneys who work under the rubric of the public defense system. And they get paid a certain amount by the state per case, and that was the issue when they went on strike earlier. And the reason that there's a breakdown is that 80% of all cases are handled in the district court, 80% of criminal cases. Those are the cases that are largely handled by bar advocates. The 20% that are the serious felonies, indictable and handled in superior court are handled by CPCS. The Inspector General just issued a report talking about what they consider to be a breakdown of this system, and they enumerated a few what they believe are critical reasons for this. The one that jumped out at me was they take issue with the criteria by which people are determined to be indigent and therefore entitled to a public defender. I understand that. What I don't understand is them laying that at the feet of the public counsel's office, because it's the probation department that determines.
Oh, that's a great point.
I don't know why they're being, CPCS is being blamed for this. They take the cases they're given, but they don't determine whether or not someone is indigent. That's the probation department, which falls under the trial court.
By the way, you're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. I know it was a while ago. I have to say, in the spirit of full disclosure, I have a bias. I am a huge supporter of these underworked, underpaid lawyers. I'm not saying
Overworked.
it's perfect. Oh, I meant overworked. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, and underpaid lawyers. What was your experience dealing with the staff part, not the private sector, the staff attorneys, when you were a prosecutor in the Suffolk DA's office a while back there, Andrea?
They work incredibly hard. The bar advocates and the CPCS attorneys work incredibly hard. And I think Anthony Benedetti, who's the head of CPCS, made an excellent point with regard to this report, that because the report found found fault with CPCS, saying they didn't assign enough cases to their staff attorneys, and that when the bar advocates demanded more money, CPCS didn't jump into the breach.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony Benedetti made the point of, you can't just look at this from a numbers perspective. Some of these cases, even the ones in district court, are labor intensive.
Of course.
And they demand much more of an attorney's time. You can't simply say that because someone has a certain number of cases, they're being underutilized without looking at the quality of the work that's being done. And I think it's an incredibly apt point. I haven't read the full IG report, so I'm not going to, sort of nitpick and take issues. But what I will say is, A, it is not the fault of CPCS when people to determine whether or not people are indigent and in need of their services. And B, I know from about 16 years in the system that they work incredibly hard and they are underpaid.
By the way, they are underpaid, and the ultimate deal that was struck with the private attorneys who do this, the bar advocates, was totally inadequate and left them behind surrounding states. And despite our liberal reputation, this state, the Democrats who run every piece of the state, in my opinion, don't show the adequate respect for poor people's lawyers.
Well,
Period.
just as a quick aside, Andrea, I've always been, and you probably encounter this all the time when you're prosecuting cases in Suffolk County, but just, being a reporter and you'd be in there with some family whose loved one was a victim of crime, or they were not familiar with the court system. And they get in there and they're kind of in a state of shock. They've been watching Judge Judy on television or whatever they watched, and they don't realize that the courts are totally overwhelmed and that they have to settle so many cases because they, and plead cases down. I think people, at the late great Al Johnson, who was attorney, used to say this, people have no idea how overburdened the court system is until they unfortunately wind up involved in the court system, and then they see it and they're appalled.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And what I would also say is, and I don't know if the IG goes into this, I would hope they would for a report like this. When you talk about a lack of funding and the way funding waxes and wanes, there's a saying, it's either feast or famine. I don't know if it's ever feast for public defenders, but famine happens fairly frequently. Think about the people that they lose. Think about the rate of attrition, right? Because people simply cannot afford to do that job any longer. That means they're having to hire more attorneys with less experience. So when you make an analysis that people don't have enough cases without looking at the experience level at CBCS and within the bar advocacy program at any given time, and without knowing how equipped people are to handle cases at certain levels of difficulty, it's really not fair to the public defender's office to accuse them of understaffing unless you've got a pretty serious substantive analysis of not just the quantity of cases, but the quality of work required in those cases.
You know, Andrew, this may not be fair because I haven't been in the Suffolk courthouse for a long time, but we were always forewarned, bring your own toilet paper because you never know. There's going to be any toilet paper in the bathrooms of the Suffolk County Courthouse. I hope things have improved. I don't know. Andrea.
That was pain. Is that not how are you suffering talking to us? Are you okay?
In any pain at all.
Okay.
It's just a strain on my vocal cords.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, feel better.
Well, you've been a real
do
trooper
better,
to come in.
You were great to talk
Thank
to
you
us.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew Cabral,
Good to talk to Andrew.
the former Suffolk County Sheriff. Okay, so we are done with NEPM. Thank you very much for people tuning into NPM. I mean, done. We're on the wrong page. But anyway, we're not going to be speaking with them anymore. We're going to keep going here in Boston, though. And thank you for tuning in on NEPM. The fabulous 413 are on at 3 o'clock this afternoon. But in just a couple of minutes, I love talking to him. We're going to be joined by Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He has kept a steady eye on Trump's performance, grift-wise, in the White House. We're going to hear about that and also some fascinating connections he's drawn among the late Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted pedophile, Ghislaine, his girlfriend, Ghislaine, his girlfriend, the father of Ghislaine, and Russia. We're going to ask him all about that next. Next, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Do your part to support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, offering business and personal wealth management and private banking services, investing more than $240 million in local communities since 1994. More at cambridgetrust.com. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate, representing buyers and sellers in Cohasset, sponsor of the South Shore Art Center's 71st Annual Festival on Cohasset Common, June 19th through 21st. More at deanandhamilton.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Eakin. You're listening to 89.7 GBH. We are on tape on Wednesday of next week because we have our annual staff retreat, and that's when Jim complains about everybody in the staff, and we have to listen to it for 2 hours. But we are not going to be at the Boston Public Library on June 19th, though we will be on the air. We'll be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. And by the way, a lot of you are responding to the interview that I and Shirley Young from the Globe did with Rachel Rollins.
It was great. It was a great interview. Worth
Former U.S.
listening.
Attorney from Massachusetts. It is already posted at youtube.com/GBH News. Joined on Zoom by Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a man who's kept an eagle eye on Trump's grift while in office and his connection to powerful, disgraced men. Here is Senator Whitehouse on the Senate floor last month.
It doesn't make sense that the President of the United States, who insists on being dominant in essentially every relationship, is so submissive to one person. And that one person is Russia's dictator, Vladimir Putin.
Our guest will explain the submissiveness in a minute. Senator Whitehouse, great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me back on. It's always a treat to be with you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to talk to you too. We're going to talk about more than 2 million hits on your YouTube channel for that Talk About Russia, which we are going to talk about in just a second. But before we get to that, the so-called slush fund, where the president was talking about possibly giving money to people who had beaten up and in some cases nearly killed police officers on January 6th, that seems to be fading. But the part where Trump and his family gets basically a pass from any IRS investigation of their past misdoings, he's going to get away with that, it seems like.
And forgiven $100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wouldn't write off the cop beaters slush fund.
You wouldn't.
Trump continues to advocate for it and brag about it. You can look at it as a backward-looking reward to his thugs and cronies, but it's also plausible to look at it as a forward-looking payroll account for Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and other Trumpsters to attack the November elections. So it's really important to continue to keep an eye on it. And I think they have big goals for it, not just to kind of redeem the wounded virtue of the thugs that attacked the Capitol, but as a weapon to take on as much disruption in the November elections as they can. So I think both are very much still alive. Republicans have come out and done a lot of public hating on the slush fund, but they haven't gotten rid of it yet. And to your point, the tax amnesty for the Trump family and businesses is really unprecedented and going to continue to be a topic for us. There is one really interesting proceeding happening down in federal court in Florida,
Yes.
which is the court in which the phony baloney Trump lawsuit was filed that the slush fund purportedly settled. And about 36 respected federal retired judges wrote to the judge in that case and said, hey, we think you got hornswoggled. We think there was a fraud on the court. You ought to consider reopening the case that you closed when Trump withdrew the complaint, when too many questions started being asked, and take a look into what went on and whether there was a fraud on the court. Fraud on the court is a very unique thing, sort of in the vein of contempt of court. And the judge did reopen the case, has asked for answers Friday to the challenge by the 36 federal judges. And that could well lead into a very common situation where the judge says, okay, this is unresolved. I'm going to appoint a special counsel or a special master. They're going to look into the facts. They're going to make a report to me. And then I'm back in my judge's role. I'll make a decision based on the report, but I don't do the legwork. I don't do the investigative work. Special counsel, special master does that. So that process is not the least bit unlikely, and that will lead to a continuing exhumation of bodies that are buried around the tax deal and the slush fund, or parts of bodies that are buried around the tax deal and the slush fund, which makes it really interesting for Todd Blanche's confirmation, because he's smack in the middle of that fraud on the court operation.
We'll get to Blanche in just a second. And by the way, the reason the judges, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, said it was a potential fraud on the court is because Trump is both the plaintiff and defendant in the same litigation. He is the guy suing, and he is the head of the government that he's suing, right?
There's that.
So there's that.
And then adding on to that is that they withdrew the complaint, ending the litigation, and then entered into a settlement captioned in the litigation that no longer existed. And one of two things is true. They either had a settlement and didn't tell the court about it to take away the court's jurisdiction to potentially disapprove a collusive settlement, or they faked it afterwards and pretended that this was part of the court proceedings by using the caption and the judge's name and all of that. in the, and then the third bit is that they added on this tax thing. And how does that fit in? Was there a consideration? How did that all work? And so the entire episode collectively is the potential fraud upon the court. And fraud upon a court is a big deal. It can lead to discipline and sanctions in the case. It can lead to bar discipline for attorney misconduct as a general proposition outside of the confines of the case. And it can even lead to referral for criminal prosecution for things like obstruction and perjury and fraud. So worth keeping a close eye on the Florida judge.
And just again, to the average person, so this means that Trump and his family could have cheated the taxpayers of America up to a tune of $100 million and just get away with it. I mean, that's what this essentially says. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah. And used collusive mechanisms
to get there,
and tricking a federal court to create the vehicle to get there.
Well, don't forget, he also likes the inflation. Now, can you mention Todd Blanche a couple of seconds ago? Senator, I am of the opinion, maybe this is naively optimistic, is that now that so many of your Republican colleagues who were targeted by Trump have suffered defeats and all of a sudden grown spines, that whether it's because of Epstein, whether it's because he wouldn't rule out cop abusers getting money from the slush fund, that Blanche is not going to have an easy ride. Is that a fair characterization, or am I being naive?
I think that's a very fair characterization. If you look back at one of the other really stinky nominations of Emil Bovee from the from the Department of Justice, Trump's thug lawyer who became DOJ and was the subject of a contempt of court investigation by a federal judge. Some Trump judges stayed that contempt of court proceeding, and in that window during which the contempt proceeding was stayed, they shoved him through the Judiciary Committee, and Republicans let that happen. That's going to be hard to replicate here with Blanche. Blanche is neck deep in the Epstein files misconduct. Pam Bondi threw him under the bus herself. He is neck deep in this crooked Trump deal, both the tax amnesty and the cop beaters slush fund. And he's led a department that has set absolute unprecedented records for disaster and for failure and for lack of integrity, to the point where judges are now saying, we no longer will give the benefit of the doubt to the government. The so-called presumption of regularity is now gone due to the misconduct of this administration. So that's a ton to have to answer for, and to carry that water for a president who's polling in the 30s and falling and saying that he likes inflation, and who's continuing to mishandle the war in Iran that is driving up prices for everyone, except his fossil fuel buddies, of course, they love it. All of that is just a huge millstone around Republicans' necks. And at some point, they will have what I call the Blazing Saddles moment. You remember the movie Blazing Saddles?
Do we ever? Are you kidding me?
It's a great one. And at one point, the governor says to his Confederates, boys, it's time we looked out for our own phony baloney jobs. And I think the Republicans in Congress are starting to look at their own phony baloney jobs moment if they follow this guy off the cliff.
Mel Brooks, thanks you. You know, I should have done this before we spoke to you. I'm just looking at the members of the Judiciary Committee on which you sit, obviously. And two of the Republicans are two people who found religion. One case, Tom Tillis, when he decided not to run, and John Cornyn when he lost. So Blanche may not make it even out of committee, correct?
Correct. And there's another interesting vote that happened recently about the cop beaters slush fund. One of the votes against it in the reconciliation process that we went through was from Senator Moody in Florida. She is a thoroughgoing MAGA, but she voted against this one because she's up for election now. She has a really interesting opponent in Alex Vindman, who you will remember from Trump
Ukraine.
Impeachment 1. And he's running a real strong truth teller campaign. And so she's feeling enough heat that she has to vote against this. So that's just a tell of where the pressure points are. And I think the pressure just only gets worse as Trump continues to implode.
So, Senator, I'm going to put a challenge to you that I have a feeling you can't possibly meet, which is your speech about that Putin, Maxwell, Trump, Epstein connection was 48 minutes long. We would like you to summarize it in 1 minute and 48 seconds. Can you do that?
Sure.
Oh, you can. Take it away.
Yep.
We'll time you.
I can do that.
Go.
Everybody has looked at Trump Russia, which the president calls a hoax, which is his tell for something that is certainly true. And everybody has looked at Trump Epstein and the Trump Epstein files and how Blanche screwed up the disclosures of the Trump Epstein files. And we've looked at those as two separate things rather than as a triangle. And it looks like the real story is Trump, Russia, Epstein, with a lot of connecting tissue, including Russian girls, Russian financial transfers, Russian intelligence figures, and the long connection between Ghislaine Maxwell's father and the Russians. He was described by British intelligence as a Russian asset. So that's the core of it.
That was well under the allotted time,
it
too.
wasn't the allotted time, but this is a fascinating speech. I mean, it made me wonder when I didn't realize that he accepted secret pay. This is Ghislaine Maxwell's father, the KGB. People thought of him as a thoroughly bad character, almost certainly financed by Russia. And then I wondered about the story. Of course, the story was that he fell off his yacht in the middle of the night and died after stealing allegedly millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars pensions from his employees. So I began
to wonder. As one does.
Yes, as one does, exactly. And I was wondering, did he fall off the yacht in the middle of the night? I mean,
I've got no evidence on that, but if you look around Putin, you see lots of people falling out of windows.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, if you can fall through a window, why not fall off the yacht?
Yeah, and people should really read this at length, because the connection between these young women that were recruited from Russia, apparently the runner-up to Miss Russia, she was number 2, I guess, and women that Trump was involved with too. It gets sleazier and sleazier, I guess, is the way to describe it.
The latest installment, just yesterday's testimony by Bill Gates, in which he said that Epstein was trying to shake him down based on his knowledge, not of all of Bill Gates's affairs, but of his affairs with 2 Russian women.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that the survivors themselves have said, that Epstein would attempt to blackmail them with personal, private material from their own lives, master manipulator. I mean, really. But this is a great piece of journalism, Senator. I just loved it.
Read the whole speech. Can we change gears? Talk about senators. A guy who you hope will be a colleague of yours. We talk a lot about here. Everybody talks a lot about. Graham Plattner. In a Fox News story, they mentioned that your PAC has given, at least as of a week ago, $10,000 to Plattner's campaign before the most recent revelations in the New York Times. And maybe, I'm not even sure if it was before the sex thing. You're quoted as saying the allegations against him, well, not allegations, because he admits to everything, I think, except for the physical abuse in the most recent New York Times thing, seems like a lot of nothing. Do you feel it still seems like a lot of nothing? And whether you think he can win this race against Susan Collins or not, do you worry about for example, the other day, Governor Healy told us, and I'm paraphrasing, but very close to this, I find much of his behavior disgusting, but I am totally behind him should he win the primary, and he obviously did. Do you have any anxiety about what the implications of his candidacy may be for other Democratic candidates, Senator? I didn't explain that well, but you know what the question is.
I don't think whatever problems he may have transferred to other Democrat candidates. I think the question for Maine voters is, do they accept a story of a returning veteran with very significant post-traumatic stress and a lot of trouble, as he said himself, with alcohol and so forth after that, who then found his way back from a very difficult situation by opening the oyster business, becoming the harbor master in his town. That story of redemption, I think, is one that a lot of people in America are familiar with. And I think, he's been very candid that he has not been a good boyfriend. He's not been a good person always, but that he found his way back after the very dark times post his triple combat tours. So
do you accept his story,
that's up
Senator?
to him.
You said it's up for people in Maine. Do you, as I know you're not a Maine voter of it, do you accept his story of redemption?
I don't have any reason not to accept it. And in my personal life, I think like many of us, we've all known people who got into bad times and did things that they came to regret and then put their lives back together, became sober, whatever it was that it took to get them there, and are now people you're really, really proud to know. So that's not an unusual scenario. That's not a rare scenario. That's a fairly common scenario. And there's every reason to believe that that is the scenario. He did serve the 3 tours. He did have PTSD. He did get a disability from the VA as he went in for treatment. And he did restore himself to a position where, people who aren't from around like us, they don't know what a harbor master is.
Yeah.
But, harbor master is a pretty big deal. It's a lot of trust. You got to go out into considerable danger. There's a lot of nuisance and bad weather and all sorts of stuff. It's not a nothing. And so I think his story of rebuilding his life is quite a, frankly, touching one. And he's very candid about saying, and before that happened, yeah, I did some pretty crappy stuff.
Before you go,
just one thing about this. We just got another text from Maine, as we always do on this, that a lot of people just say they don't want a woman that voted 96% of the time with Donald Trump. They like his attention to working class issues. He's a working class guy. I know he went to a nice private school, but, he's not loaded. And they like his platform. And they also like the fact that they want a Democratic Senate. So the idea, this is bigger than just what he was doing with girlfriends and all that.
If you put him against like Hegseth.
Exactly.
Or Trump himself.
Yeah.
Or even Kavanaugh, against whom the testimony was under oath, subject to cross-examination and corroborated, and the Republicans managed to run away from all of that. They get into a real hypocrisy zone, trying to pile on too much to a veteran with a disability that he's acknowledged and overcome and is now, a very decent and successful member of Maine's community.
That's
just as relating to what you just said, when people ask us, we're out in the world, Senator, who's the one guest you really want you've been unable to get? Marjorie and I say the same thing at the same time. Pete Hegseth's mother. That's who we want on this show. Before you go, this is Rhode Island Day here by coincidence.
Oh, we love Rhode
Immediately
Island.
after you, Mitchell Garabedian, who I think is a saint, frankly, has been on the show many times, with Dr. Herb Brennan, who I'm sure you know, are going to talk to us about what the Rhode Island legislature is finally doing around those who've been sexually abused by both the clergy and other institutions. When you were the AG down there, you attempted to get more disclosure, I know, from the church, more transparency. What's your take on this deal that was cut in the Rhode Island legislature?
Well, I think it signals, first of all, a real turnabout in the diocese in Rhode Island. I think Bishop Lewandowski brings a complete breath of fresh air about this issue and others. And I think the Attorney General, Peter Nerona, is entitled to an enormous amount of credit for having very carefully, very thoughtfully put together an extremely well-prepared report about this whole saga, so that the truth about what happened is now out, well documented, and I think all of that has helped the legislature move forward. So I think both Attorney General Nerona and Bishop Lewandowski get credit for having gotten us to the place where it now is.
Senator, as always, we really appreciate your time. Hope you come back soon. Be well.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Marjorie.
And
as
congrats
always.
on the
See you
essay
soon.
on Russia and Epstein and Donald Trump.
See you soon. Take care.
We've been speaking with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, of course, from Rhode Island. After this quick break, another dispatch from Rhode Island, where, as we just talked about, state legislators have opened a window for victims of clergy sex abuse to file lawsuits against their perpetrators even after the statute of limitations has passed. We'll speak with noted defense attorney Mitchell Garabedian and Dr. Herb Brennan, a survivor himself. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, imagine, if you will, robots too small to be perceived by the naked eye, controlled remotely by an intricate system of magnets. It's like something out of James Bond.
Positively shocking.
We'll see what a local team of scientists are up to. Well, we won't see, they're microscopic, but neither will you, because it's radio. That's the Curiosity Desk, today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the International Institute of New England, an advocate of refugees and immigrants in Boston since 1924, serving thousands of our newest neighbors annually. IINE.org. And MIT Federal Credit Union, banking built on innovation, guided by real people. Memberships open to the public. More at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder. We're at the library tomorrow. We're on tape Wednesday of next week. It's our annual retreat, back on the air the following day, Thursday. Joined now on Zoom by the man I want to be when I grow up, Mitchell Garabedian, internationally renowned attorney and advocate for victims of clergy sex abuse. He's spent decades, you know this, advocating for those abused by the very spiritual leaders they trusted most in the Catholic Church, brilliantly portrayed in the Oscar-winning film Spotlight, which is spectacular. In Rhode Island, legislators have just moved to make it easier for victims of clergy sexual abuse and other abuse to have accountability, opening a window for victims, survivors to sue their alleged abusers even after the traditional statute of limitations has passed. We'll get that described by our guest. Mitchell is joined with us on Zoom by Dr. Herb Brennan, a Catholic clergy sex abuse survivor and advocate himself. Mitchell, doctor, thank you for coming back. Really good to see you both.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us back, Jim, Marjorie.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. So, Doctor, last time we talked to you, you were working on this change with the statute of limitations, but there has been some action since then. So fill us in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. What a strange trip it's been. I know more about the legislative workings now than I ever wanted to know. But no, interestingly, it's like making sausage. The end result is good. But yes, we experienced some reticence as this moved from an overwhelmingly positive response from the Rhode Island House of Representatives. We were met with some reticence by the Rhode Island Senate Judiciary Committee. As they looked at this, their trouble was they needed a path to find that this would withstand constitutional challenge in front of the Rhode Island Supreme Court should it land there. And their initial approach to that was, rather than pass their version of 2616, they proposed and had a committee meeting to move forward with a request for an advisory opinion from the Rhode Island Supreme Court as to its constitutionality before they would consider passing this bill, which would have been next session. Fortunately, at that hearing, two folks in particular came and testified. The Attorney General himself came and testified on behalf of this and stood up for its constitutionality and the expertise and experience of his office in defending such issues. And then recently retired federal district court judge William Smith came and testified largely to the effect that if we were to send this to the Rhode Island Supreme Court without it percolating up through the traditional court process and legal systems, then they were not going to hear it. They would recognize it as a political hot potato, and they would not hear it. Well, lo and behold, in the 11th hour, the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate revisited 2616, made some minor adjustments in the form of a substitute A version that were amenable and acceptable to both the House and the survivor community, and that opened the door for its passage through the Senate Judiciary Committee and the full Senate, and then just on Monday passed through the full House again. It goes to Governor McKee, and there will be a signing ceremony at 3:00 today where he will put pen to paper, and we will have achieved what I think is a meaningful change in Rhode Island law.
Mitchell Garabedian, can you, and first of all, congratulations, Doctor, to you and the others who've worked so hard for this. What is this revival window? Could you describe exactly what the governor's signing this afternoon?
Sure. The revival window is a window that will allow old claims to be brought that are out of statute, which the statute of limitations has run. Beginning July 1st of this year for 2 years, anyone with a claim that has expired previously expired because of statute of limitations running will have 2 years to file a claim. And Jim, as you well know, as you can well imagine, the victims and survivors who are 70, 80 years old now are calling me saying, "You mean I can get justice, that I can get a chance at validation, there's going to be transparency." They're ecstatic that they will have a right to speak in court, to have a voice.
You know, Mitchell, staying with you, if I can, just for 1 second, one thing I wasn't clear about, one of the stories I read about this said while the focus has been on the Catholic Church, it covers a whole spectrum of institutions. And I think we read that only 4% of the institutions covered, a small percentage was the church. What's the breadth of institutions, Mitchell Garabedian, that this law will cover?
Well, any institutions.
Okay.
It covers public, private institutions, and as we've seen across the country with the Boy Scouts, with other religious denominations, with other clubs involving children, any club involving children, the scope and breadth is overwhelming, and you're gonna have individuals come forward who are going to say, "I belong to that club, that sports club, for instance, and that man used to abuse me, or that woman used to sexually abuse me." They'll be coming forward because it's a voice for all.
You know something, Mitchell Garabedian, you're the expert on this. I've often wondered, there seems to be an aversion, obviously, in the church, which covered this up for decades, and the institution covered it up for decades and all that. But you see this again and again in you mentioned the Boys Club, or St. George's, that school that's also in Rhode Island, or in general, the guy who was the coach there out in Penn State. Why are people so averse to dealing with this? There seems to be an instinctual, institutional hesitancy to do anything.
It's about money and greed. It's always been about money and greed.
Yeah.
The institutions are run by powerful people who know powerful people of other institutions, and they're in a very powerful position. They use their money, their influence, their power to make sure bills like this do not pass. And that's why Dr. Brennan and so many survivors should be commended for this work. It's all about power and money. It's not about the truth and transparency. Why don't we have a bill in Massachusetts like this? Because Archbishop Henning doesn't want one. That's why we don't.
We did make some progress on statute of limitations issues in Massachusetts a bunch of years ago. Did we not, Mitchell, or am I wrong?
Yeah, not for old claims.
Oh,
not
okay,
for old
okay,
claims like
okay,
this.
Okay.
There is no look back window. I mean, Vermont has amended their statute of limitations. Maine at least tried to. You have states around the country amending their statute of limitations so victims can have a voice, victims can feel empowered, and children can be kept safe. Yeah. This has to continue to happen. And if I can just say one thing, what strikes me every time the statute of limitations law has been amended like this, the institutions underestimate the power and strength of survivors and victims' voices. You know, when 9/11 occurred, it was horrible. And many experienced lawyer came up to me on the sidewalk when 9/11 occurred and said, you were onto a good thing, too bad it's gone. 9/11's horrible. Within 60 days of 9/11 occurring, we were back on the news concerning clergy sexual abuse. Voices were being heard again. The institutions underestimate the power of survivors and victims all the time.
Well,
Doctor,
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what do you hear in your network of survivors that I'm sure you've grown close with? What do you hear about this?
Thanks, Marjorie. Well, it's an ongoing occurrence. Every time there's a interview such as this or an article in the paper, I get an envelope on my desk, sealed, personal, private. Sometimes they ask me to read it and burn it.
Wow.
Number of emails. Just yesterday, a person that I worked with for years and years and said, congratulations. I just want you to know, of course, me too. So it's ongoing and ever present. And if I may too, the governors had asked me to make some remarks this afternoon, and the group that I'm going to speak to is not, myself or Dr. Ann Hagen-Webb or others who have served as the main advocates for this. And it's not to the group that went with the courage and presented to the Attorney General to help produce that report. I want to speak to the hundreds, and I believe, and Attorney Garabedian will agree with me, I want to speak to the hundreds of Rhode Islanders who have who have been abused and have never spoken a word. And I'm confident, and Mitch agrees, there are hundreds of Rhode Islanders who fit that category. They're the ones that we fought for, and they're the ones we would like to see again regain their voice, regain their dignity, and have their day in court. So I think the numbers will be large.
One of the wonderful parts of this story that I read the other day, you guys both know this, I did not. We know Dr. Ann Hagen-Webb, a psychologist and also a high-profile, effective survivor advocate.
And let me just add Jim Scanlon, of course, who you're very familiar
I want to
with.
mention.
Yeah.
I want to mention him
At Boston College High School, he was abused.
Yes.
But Ann Hagen-Webb is the sister of the House Judiciary Committee chair who was involved in this. So that, and that's the last thing I wanted to say to you, Doctor. In the Globe story on this by Edward Fitzpatrick, they quote James Scanlon, who, by the way, in the film, in Spotlight, was known as Kevin from Providence. And he says he'll gain nothing financially from this. Here's his quote. "For me, this isn't about the past, it's about the future. Survivors and victims who have not been able to have their day in court, they have not had an opportunity to be heard. And for many of them, that's all they were asking for, the opportunity for justice." You're nodding in agreement. The opportunity to be heard, even if at the end of the process, there isn't financial well, it can never really be financial compensation, is what this is all about. Is it not, Doctor?
It absolutely is. And one of the things that added clarity to this for Dr. Webb, Mr. Scanlon, and myself is there's nothing in this for any one of us. This is about others. And yes, that's they want a voice. They want to feel vindicated. And Mitch told me this, that one of the last things that disappears for a victim is the shame. And there's no need to be shamed. There's no need for the victim to bear the shame. And this process will allow them, I believe, to finally shed that shame that has been around their neck for so long and they never deserved in the first place.
Doctor, you're fabulous, and we wish you congratulations and good luck and all fellow survivors. And Mitchell, let's in the near future have a discussion about a revival window in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Sure thing. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thanks and congratulations. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 3:00 today, the governor's going to sign this. That's really quite wonderful, actually.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of hard work, and I'm so happy that they prevailed. We've been speaking with renowned attorney and advocate for clergy sexual abuse victims, Mitchell Garabedian, and survivor, Dr. Herb Brennan. Thank you very much both for being with us. We appreciate it. Okay, coming up after a quick break, this is Am I the A-Hole Day.
Don't embarrass yourself.
I'm not
Don't
embarrass
tease
myself.
it now. We'll get back to it.
We'll talk about it when we get back after the break. He's Jim Browdy. I'm Marjorie Egan. This is Boston Public Radio.
Learn something new.
I want to start with how crowds of people can act like fluids.
Yes.
What?
I mean, this is physics, so I love it.
Make a connection.
I have no idea who they voted for. I don't care. This tailgate in particular, everybody's welcome.
Dig a bit deeper.
We're often looking for a small secular liturgy for our lives, and poetry can provide that sometimes.
Stay curious with All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Native Plant Trust, a source for pollinator-friendly plants. Available at Garden in the Woods in Framingham. More at nativeplanttrust.org.
And the Boston Speaker Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, war photographer Lindsay Addario, and former U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns. BostonSpeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Now, by the way, we're really short on time because we wanted to spend time with Senator Whitehouse and with Dr. Brennan and Mitchell Garabedian. So once I described to you the Am I the A-hole scenario, if you're interested, which you must be, call quickly. This week's edition of Am I the A-hole comes from the Reddit forum with the same name. A woman asked if it's okay for her husband to spend 10 hours straight on the weekend with his friends away from her. The couple been together for 7 years, and every other Saturday, her husband gets together with his friends to play Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, and other harmless but nerdy games. It's usually only for a few hours. No, actually, that's not true.
6 to 1 a.m.
It is 6 to 1 a.m.
7
This
hours.
time, it was 10 hours.
10 hours.
And this is the key. He took the only
car.
car their family
That's
has
right.
while she is taking care of his special needs brother.
Yeah, and the special needs brother likes to go out for a little treat with his sister on those
On the weekends,
Exactly.
So who's the bigger a-hole? The wife for not letting him, not letting him, this is not fair, for objecting to him spending all this time with his friends with the car, or the husband who takes the car and spends all day outside the house playing board games like a 4-year-old. Call or text, I'm not taking sides, 877-301-8970. We talk all the time about male loneliness epidemic, but this guy wants to go spend time with his friends.
With his buddies.
In a fairly harmless way. You know, I don't know. I don't think I play Dungeons and Dragons all the time, of course. No, I don't. Okay, one of our colleagues said this morning, we won't out this particular person, who said, if my spouse left for 10 hours on the weekend to spend time with, let's say, his or her friends, I'd be cheering. And so I have a feeling a lot of people think this is A-OK. Our number is 877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole? The guy who spends 7 to 10 hours every other Saturday, not just with his friends, but with the family car, or the wife who is somewhat annoyed that he disappears with. I think she cares more about not having the car than she does about not having the husband.
That is the key.
If the second car wasn't disabled, which it is,
he should have
she'd be
taken
fine.
an Uber, let her have the car. There wouldn't be a problem here, because I think there's many a wife in the United States of America. I'm sounding sexist because women play golf too, but when it comes to the weekends and their husband's got the
play as long as you want.
You take 4 hours.
Play
of the course,
36.
a couple of beers after the thing.
Play
You got to get there early
54.
for breakfast. You know, they cannot wait till he goes out and hits that golf ball on the weekends and get him out of the house. It's great.
Who's the a-hole is the question. And by the way, beyond who's the a-hole, how do you feel about your spouse disappearing to have fun with by the way, that's what she doesn't question. She is of the belief that he's actually doing this.
Yeah, she's not suspicious that he's out meeting some woman at the no-tell motel.
10 hours with Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, or, a lady of the evening. We thought.
No, do not do this. Do not. We went to Les Mis last night. The leads of Les Miserables are going to be on our show next week.
They're
We went
great.
and we
They're
saw something
talented.
that we will not describe.
Okay.
Because I, for one, like living, Marjorie. So I think it's probably safer if we don't describe what we saw in the audience. Okay? Thank you very much. 877-301-8970. By the way, the play was great.
It was great.
Performers were great.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you want to get rid of your spouse for 10 hours every week, or do you want that person hanging around the house as long as they leave you the car, especially if you have a special needs brother who wants to go out for ice cream or something like that? 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Okay.
Let's take a call and we'll get started. We haven't much time. Chris and Waylon, hi. You're first. Welcome.
Yeah, just a question. What's her name?
Why
you
want
the name of the...
You want to
That's a good one,
look
Chris.
her up?
Took me a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Why are you trying to sneak out of the house when you're not able to? Is that the bottom line?
Kind of.
Yeah. And why is that? Because of suspicion or because your partner just loves spending time with you?
Yeah, 10 hours with a friend.
Okay.
You haven't said anything about this.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, we got it,
He's
Chris. Thank you for the
suspicious.
call. Rotten connection, but thank you very much for your point of view.
He's
We appreciate
suspicious
it.
that it's really not 10 hours for the friend. Time for an Apple AirTag on that car. Sounds like he's having a special, quote, magical gathering.
No, he is
unquote.
with friends. He is a magical guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
How come
Dungeons
that
and
doesn't come
Dragons.
up in the whole
Here's somebody
Reddit
else.
thing?
He's the a-hole, even if he didn't take the car. Dungeons and Dragons. Grow up, you nerd.
Why can't she get an Uber or a Lyft and go out? I'm not saying that he shouldn't have left the car, but if he takes it, why can't, if she wants to go out with her brother, why doesn't she just take a Lyft herself and
Because
go to
I
the
think
brother?
because she helps take care of...
I understand. We'll take care of him, and we're just fine. And she spends time with him. Take a Lyft herself and go to the movie or get an ice cream cone
Well,
or
I
whatever.
think if you're home taking care of a family member that you take care of on the weekends, you want to have a little bit more freedom than having to take.
Yeah, but you want to have a car for your buddies to get in when you go to the Dungeons and Dragons store to check out the
Yeah.
merchandise.
Why
before.
does he need the car? What's that all about?
What?
Why does he need all the car?
Why do you
the
think
car?
he needs the car, Marjorie? I mean, you've fallen for this BS too. She should say, "Tell me how
She
you
should
play
hire
Dungeons
a
and Dragons,
private detective.
Mr. Husband."
That's right. The Apple AirTag, or a private detective.
Chris and
We've all
Cohas.
heard those great stories.
What?
We've all heard those great stories about those private detectives. That's not true. I wasn't doing anything.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
I was playing Dungeons
Here
and
are
Dragons.
the photos.
Oh, but your pants are on backwards. Oh, well, we put them on backwards for Dungeons and Dragons. That's Thank you. Chris from Cohasset.
Do people
Welcome.
know that Nelson Rockefeller story?
No, well, actually, tell it after Chris. That's one of the best stories
it's an
maybe
ancient
ever.
story, but-
Chris and Cohasset, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey there, guys.
Hi. Who's the a-hole?
So I think the wife is, but they should be able to meet in the middle and figure out the car situation. That
Exactly.
really seems like what the issue is. I mean, how many men over 20 do you know that have more than one friend? You know what I mean? That they actually spend time with?
Yeah.
And how many men do you know over 20 that have a hobby? Right? So it's like, let him have his thing. But they got to figure that car out. You can't just leave your wife at home being a caretaker. That's not fair.
Chris, that is an excellent analysis, which neither of us thought about. Can you tell the Nelson? It doesn't matter. It's old. It's a
Yeah,
great
it's a
story.
great story.
Nelson Rockefeller, former governor,
Vice
of
president.
New York, and vice
That's
president. Right.
That's right. Well, as it happened, he was in distress one day, and Megan Marshak, who happened to be
Can't
in
believe
his
remember her
apartment
name.
at the time, called 911, and she was a young thing of about 19 or 20.
We don't call him young thing. She was a young woman.
Okay, maybe she was in her 20s.
Okay.
She's probably overage. But
Yeah.
anyway, she was with Nelson, and Nelson's wife, Happy, was where...
That was her name, Happy. Not she wasn't happy. She
Rockefeller,
was happy.
that was her name. Yeah, and when they arrived at the scene of the apartment, Nelson Rockefeller's pants were on backwards.
Backwards, which is some indication of something. I mean, you draw here.
Well, the line was, he died happy. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I understand the line.
Yeah.
So here's anonymous.
He died.
My dog gets angry whenever my husband tries to leave. She should get a dog. That's, I think that, well, thank you. That's a sound effect. It must be of a
Yeah.
dog. Anonymous, I throw the kids and the brother in the car with him and drop them all off. Have fun.
You know, the previous caller raised a good point, though.
What was it?
How many men do you know that hang out with like 7 or 8 guys every other weekend for 10 hours?
You and I are the only people who know he's not doing this. I mean, that's what she missed, which is the sad part of this whole conundrum here, is it's fairly unlikely that he's doing this, you know?
You think so? You think he's
Yeah.
lying to his wife?
She checked the odometer, did 700 miles going down the street to play Dungeons and Dragons. That's some indication of something. Tom in Abington,
Hi,
welcome
Tom.
to the show. Hi, Tom.
Hi, folks. Listen, a pretty easy solution here. How do you spell Uber?
Yeah. For who, though?
if you're
For
not-
the husband or the wife?
the husband, and he's the one. And if he's unwilling to pay for it, she can use the money to buy a lawyer because there's obviously something going on. I mean, you get an lawyer, you get you pay $20, and you get the car out of the way, and she has no problem. In fact, leave a gift certificate for the ice cream place.
I like that.
I like that.
Tom,
you
thank
thought
you.
this all through. Now, one of our texters says anyone who knows anything about Dungeons and Dragons knows a game lasts anywhere from 4 to 12 hours, depending on the campaign.
He's 34 years old. I mean, really, he chose to get married. I mean, and so, you have a marriage. You don't play for 10, whatever you just said, 10 to 14 hours.
We have a lot of board game Dungeons and Dragons defenders. Dungeons and Dragons games, very popular. People who play them in their teens are now reviving the tradition. Board games, which can also take hours, are popular. It's not the length of the game. It's that he's abandoning his wife with no transportation.
By the way, that couple we saw at the play last night, who we're not going to talk about, that could have taken 10 to 14 hours too, based on what we saw. We're not going to say what it was, but James texts, why can't they just play at their house? Now, that is a question we also didn't think about. Why did they go to the other guy's house to play Dungeons and Dragons for 10 hours?
Thickens.
That's a good thing. Why didn't she the wife, why didn't she say, play here? So I have the car. That's another solution that does not involve Uber or Lyft,
I think we should take over-under on whether he's really playing Dungeons and Dragons or whether something else is
Maybe with that. What is that, SUV
from Law and
BS
Order.
or what is that
My
again?
favorite TV show.
What are the letters for that
I can
thing?
watch 19 hours of that baby
SVU,
right in a row.
thank
Law
you,
and Order,
close
SVU.
enough.
I mean,
Thank
why
you.
do I watch that show? It's really horrific.
David, you watch many with your kid, don't you?
Yeah, it's like an addiction.
I
They
like that.
run one into the other. They run one into the other. They roll off.
You don't have to watch the next one, by
I know,
the way.
but
You can
you
wait for
get
another
hooked.
time to
You get
watch it.
hooked.
Let's go to David in Tiverton, one of Marjorie's favorite haunts when she was a kid.
That's right.
Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi there. That's picturesque Tiverton.
Picturesque.
You're
It's beautiful.
right. My
I love
apologies.
Tiverton.
Thank you.
Well, this is my for 2 hours every day.
Wait, do that again
my
because we
hearing
lost
aids
you.
and-
David, we lost you. Start from the beginning. Go.
Oh, okay. I listen to your show every day for 2 hours, and my wife is bothered by that because I listen on my hearing aids.
Why is she? Wait, why is she bothered by that?
I can't hear her either.
What is she doing that's so important? I don't get it.
What is she doing? That's
Why
so
is she
important?
upset that you're listening for 2 hours a day?
Oh, because she talks to me, and I have to ask her what she just said.
Oh, well, that's so tell her to wait till 1 o'clock and you'll pay attention to everything. David, thanks for the call.
Thank you for the call from beautiful Tiverton. It is beautiful in Tiverton. A lot of people are big Dungeons and Dragons people that listen to us, I guess. As a woman who has dated many Magic, the Gathering, and Dungeons and Dragons nerds, I can attest that 10 hours playing the game is regrettably a very real phenomenon.
Anonymous texter says, what if you spent 10 hours watching Airplane or Anchorman?
I'm a man.
Exactly.
I'm Anchorman.
Thank you for that.
Kyle in Pembroke wants to know if any of all his friends have a driver's license.
What's that?
If any of one of these 10
Friends
friends has a driver's
that's another
license.
great point. Are you listening to this, Edgar, or not?
bit, yeah.
Okay, put your headphones on. You don't need headphones.
Okay.
Well, actually, you do need headphones. Don't say that, Jim. What's your analysis?
I think first of all, the larger issue here is our car-centric culture.
That's right.
Is the car that necessary? No, I think he's absolutely playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Why is that?
Because I think it does. I think it often can and does take 10 hours for these campaigns to happen. I think it makes total sense. I think he's really doing the Dungeons and Dragons thing.
Can I ask you a related question?
Nasty thing about Dungeons and Dragons.
Here's
Did you see that one?
What is it? If you want to read it, you can. What is it?
It's kind of mean.
Oh, don't do that. No, don't read it. I just don't. Don't talk about what happened at the play, and don't talk about that. So here's a related question for you, Mr. Curiosity Desk.
Go ahead.
Why are there 12 eggs in a? Why did we sell them by the dozen? Have you figured that out? We've been asking this for months.
We're working on this, Jim.
The
Some
team is
things
on
are
it?
very complex. Although you bring this up, it's interesting that you bring this up when you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons because that die has 12 sides as well. So is that a coincidence? I don't know.
That is creepy as anything.
You know more about Dungeons and Dragons than you think you do subconsciously.
That is really shocking. What are you doing on the show today?
Well, today we are going to learn. We talked about this a little bit last week. We are going to learn about the Steffen method. The Steffen method is an astrophysicist who claims he has figured out the optimal way to board an airplane. He named the method after himself.
This is huge,
The
actually.
Steffen
This is
method.
big.
We are going to learn about the Steffen method and whether or not It will make all of our lives easier at the airport.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
And we have Joan Donovan as well. So,
but you said it's not backwards to front.
It's not back to front.
It's not back to front,
listen to the
Jim.
damn show.
Listen
Can
to
you
the
do
show.
me a favor, ask Joan, who's one of the smartest people I know?
Yes, absolutely.
Why are there 12 eggs in a case? Can you ask her
I'm
that?
on it. We're on
thank
it.
you. I appreciate it. She'll know, by the way.
Okay.
She will.
Thank you very
Goodbye.
much for listening to
Nice-
another
you don't have to
edition
leave.
of
You're-
Boston
you're
Public Radio.
studio
Keep up with
too.
this 24/7. We have our podcast, cleverly called Boston Public Radio. We have a great TikTok page as well at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're live at the Boston Public Library with Harvard's Danielle Allen, the American Prospect's Bob Kuttner. Different ideas about way we do primaries in Massachusetts. They're going to debate it.
Was a ballot question that she's sponsoring. Can I also say on YouTube, our interview, Shirley Leung and mine, with Rachel Rollins is on YouTube, and
a lot
the
of
piece
people
we did.
are praising you there.
Well, whatever. Just watch it, and the piece we did on the closing day last Sunday of S&S Restaurant is also on YouTube.
Okay, we're going to have Sue O'Connell with us at the library tomorrow, and Northeastern's Lee Gould to talk about women in the military. Thanks to Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Ariana Gonzalez. Our stream today was Colin Cockrell and Bill Francis. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Special thanks to everyone who worked on the Rollins interview with Jim and Shirley Young from the Globe. Stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk, starring, he's right next to us now, Edgar B. Heroic III. And then the Culture Show with Jerry Bones starts at 2. He's going to speak with cookbook author Dorie Greenspan about her recent Substack newsletter. Oh, we're out of time. Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. UMass, the state's flagship public research university, empowers students to be the future in the pursuit of progress for Massachusetts and beyond. More at umass.edu. And Porter Square Books. Northwood's author Daniel Mason discusses his new book, Country People, on July 7th. Info at portersquarebooks.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Heroic III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, we're meeting Craig Newmark, a.k.a. Craig from Craigslist. In the year of our Lord 2026, it is easier than ever to get scammed online. And you have more than the odd Nigerian prince to watch out for. The rise of AI is certainly not helping things. Craig's teamed up with Count Von Count from Sesame Street for a new campaign as part of his anti-scam group, Take 9. The Count, unfortunately, rebuffed our invitation to be a part of the interview. Then, in history-rich Massachusetts, you would think you'd have heard every story by now, at least the good ones. We learned just how wrong we are with the host of the podcast History That Doesn't Suck. And finally, one astrophysicist has done the math and says he's cracked the code on how to improve the historically hellish process for boarding passengers on airplanes. Climb aboard this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says that the United States will launch heavier attacks on Iran tonight. He made the claim on social media this morning. The U.S. and Iran have been trading military strikes since the downing of a U.S. Apache helicopter Monday. President Trump blamed that on Iran. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has the latest.
The president has continually made threats and pronouncements about the war on social media, and this latest post amps up his rhetoric. He wrote that the U.S. will be, quote, hitting Iran, adding later in all caps, very hard tonight. Trump also threatened to attack Karg Island, which is central to Iran's oil exports. However, Trump told Fox News this morning that the U.S. and Iran are still in talks. He added that he doesn't want to have boots on the ground, but that if he wants, he could send in, quote, a small group of soldiers. President Trump has said many times that an end to the war could come imminently. Earlier this week, he said an agreement to end the war could be coming within days. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
The rising price of doing business is likely to put even more pressure on U.S. consumers and add to voter frustration this midterm election year. A new Labor Department report shows the producer price index in May rose 6.5% from a year ago. The Iran war is contributing to a fuel price surge that's largely driving inflationary pressures. NPR Scott Horsley is tracking the impact on the average consumer.
Because of those high gas prices, a lot of people are having to cut corners elsewhere. Emily Inlow is a mother of two in Nicholasville, Kentucky. She says cost and driving distance have forced her to skip sending her 11-year-old son to summer camp this year.
It feels awful as a parent not being able to give these experiences to my kids that I had growing up. And it just feels like I'm not doing great as a parent, but we got to do what we got to do.
Inlow's 5-year-old daughter is in daycare, and nationwide daycare prices are also up about 3.5%.
NPR Scott Horsley. Riots continued overnight in Northern Ireland after a stabbing in the capital Belfast earlier this week. The suspect in the attack is a refugee from Sudan. NPR's Lauren Fair says calls to violence have been amplified online by far-right social media accounts.
Masked men with hit lists and Molotov cocktails have been going door to door in parts of East Belfast, hunting for foreigners or people of colour in what the United Kingdom's Minister for Northern Ireland calls racist thuggery. Billionaire ex-owner Elon Musk is one of those sharing anti-immigrant material online. Belfast Police Chief Constable John Boucher urged people to ignore such posts.
Stop listening to these idiots. We will be going after them, the incitement that they've been doing.
Charred homes and torched cars are reminiscent of what rival paramilitaries did to Belfast a generation ago during 3 decades of Catholic-Protestant conflict known as the Troubles. Lauren Freyer, NPR News, London.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The New Hampshire Supreme Court has overturned Adam Montgomery's murder conviction for the fatal beating of his 5-year-old daughter, Harmony Montgomery, citing a procedural flaw in how this case was tried. The Globe reports 36-year-old Adam Montgomery was convicted in 2024 of second-degree murder for recklessly causing his daughter's death and then second-degree assault for an earlier incident of physical abuse. But today, the High Court ruled that keeping those two charges together in a single case jeopardized his right to a fair trial. We'll have more on this later in the day. Brookline's largest affordable housing development in more than 50 years opened for business earlier this week. Brookline.news reports that state and local officials gathered on Monday for the 32 Marion Street ribbon-cutting ceremony. The Brookline Housing Authority also celebrated the new 6-story, 115-unit building. Building replaces the former Colonel Floyd Apartments, a 60-unit public housing development that was built back in 1959. The new development serves low-income seniors and adults with disabilities, a population housing officials say that faces increasing pressure from rising housing costs across Greater Boston. In sports, we're just 2 hours away from the first FIFA World Cup game of 2026. It starts at 3 p.m. with Mexico playing South Africa, and then at 10 p.m. it's Korea Republic versus Czechia. NHL playoffs, the Golden Knights are at the Hurricanes. They are tied at 2 games apiece. 85 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Bank of America, sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2026, dedicated to offering solutions to help businesses win locally and globally. More at bankofamerica.com/gamechangers.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Why don't you join us there? Or live at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We're going to have a mentalist. It's Mentalist Meets Mental Host. I hope you can join us. It is free. As for now, we welcome to another round of The Glitch Report, our weekly tear through internet dystopias, misinformation, and all the ways interactions shape our grass-touching real world. With us on this journey, as always, is Joan Donovan. She is the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, a BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies, a Curiosity Desk contributor, and, of course, the co-creator of the beaver emoji. With her today, via Zoom, Craig Newmark, who, in the mid to late 90s, founded a small online classifieds service you may have heard of called Craigslist. Yes, it is that Craig. He is also founder of an organization called Take 9, helping to raise awareness of online scams and sharing ways to protect yourself. Here he is in a recent ad with fellow celebrity and PBS icon, Count Von Count.
I've been fighting online scams for 25 years.
And I have been counting for over 2,500 years.
Hey, you don't look a day over 2,200.
We are here to talk to you about the power of counting to 9.
Counting to 9 before you click, download, or share can help you spot and avoid scams.
So remember,
count before you click.
You're natural.
Joan, welcome back. Craig Newmark, welcome to the Curiosity Desk. Great to have you here. That's a pretty good Count Von Count you do there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I'll keep my day job.
So, Craig, I want to start with you. Why are you teaming up with the Count here? Tell us about this organization and this campaign.
Well, we need to get the word out to pretty much everyone in the country that we have to be more alert for scams and frauds. And we have to take whatever measures we can to complement what we can expect from government and law enforcement in general. My deal is I've gotten help from the Count since I really am a nerd and I really have a deep need to outsource my social skills.
Did you sort of look at the landscape and you figured that Count was the nerdiest of the Muppets, so he would be perfect for this campaign?
Actually, he can practice the social skills that I lack. That leaves me free to focus on my core branding, particularly social awkwardness.
Well, we respect you staying true to the brand, Craig. Why 9 seconds in this? The big thing around this is count to 9. Is there a reason for the 9?
Well, a pretty intense, often successful practice among scammers and fraudsters is to try to rush people into decisions. And in practice, if you would take a beat, count maybe to 9 plus or minus, that'll keep you out of certain kinds of trouble.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So 9 seconds. Joan.
Yeah.
9 seconds.
9 seconds. Well, I mean, I think we've all been through this.
Yeah.
We get you're watching online, you see an ad that's your favorite shoes are 80% off. You think, and and it's saying limited time only, and you think, okay, I'm gonna.
And there's like a countdown clock.
There's a countdown,
or it's like there's only 6 left.
Yeah, there's only 5 left, etc. And so that pressure is part of a package that when we study this, we call it social engineering. And so scammers are often trying to engineer a situation around you so that you feel pressured into buying the product or giving money, or sometimes it can be just getting your information, right? And so the way in which the web has evolved, and particularly with generative AI, has made it so much harder to know who you're dealing with, especially with not just like hoaxing individuals online, but also there are fake stores, there's fake commerce, there's fake insurance. And in times like COVID, the scams were awful because they were selling, they're selling masks and any kind of cleaning fluids and Purell and things that we need to survive.
Yeah. And
you think you're ordering them and it's going to nowhere. And part of this is related to the way in which tech companies have really, they'll get some of the more egregious stuff off the websites, but they're not deeply checking if these are real websites or not.
Yeah. Craig, how did you get on this as an issue? As you point out in the PSA, you've been fighting online scams for 25 years. Does this connect with the fact that you are the Craig from Craigslist, and this was a platform that you sort of kind of made, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I assume not trying to make a place for scammers, but then this is a place where some scamming was happening,
My deal is that I commit to something and I take it personally, and seeing scams and fraud happen in any manner kind of pisses me off. So I've tried to do what I can about it. That included even talking to professional scam fighters, cops, and so on, to find out what the company could do about it. Now, a lot of that happened after I turned over all management responsibility
Yeah.
to a guy named Jim Buckmaster, but I've been personally involved and committed for all that time. Only recently, the big change is that I got to get much louder about it because we have to figure out better what best practices are and then work with industry, government, and everyone else to improve best practices and to set the bar high and get everyone to pitch in.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Joan Donovan and Craigslist founder Craig Newmark. Well, speaking of best practices, what I mean, I'd love you both to weigh in on this, but is there a role for these big tech companies, the platforms themselves? What is their responsibility in terms of what do you make of it in terms of policing the site or detecting scammers on their own? Like, what responsibility do the big tech platforms have at this point?
Well, I think when they're serving up advertising and the advertising is explicitly scams and they start to find out, you actually have to find a way to notify all of the people that have been harmed. We haven't seen any of that, though. It's sort of when we see these scams happen, they get swept under the rug. Years ago, I was part of an amazing group of student debt organizers. They organized on Facebook as the Debt Collective, and they ended up getting $132 million forgiven in student loans.
Wow.
By taking on Corinthian colleges. What was interesting, though, is every one of those students that I would talk to as an organizer, they'd be targeted with student loan scams on Facebook nearly every day because they were in groups that dealt with debt.
Right.
And you see that with homeownership, insurance, anybody that's looking for information online is going to get some kind of link to something. And so I think the platform companies, they have to deal with not just the actors, but also the design of their platforms that allow for this kind of commerce to happen, allow for these scammers to reach the people. But I'm interested in what Craig has to say.
Yeah, Craig, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. My focus is on figuring out solutions that could help us all out. For example, on phones, I want to see on-device, really tight, large language modules, like Google Nano, which can check messages or calls and see if it's possibly a scammer approaching the phone's owner, and then could warn you that, hey, something smells really bad. On the server side, I have hope that the big guys can do things like using the large language models to sniff out when a scammer is posting an ad, because the big guys should know their customers and at least act in good faith to detect when the, let's say the advertiser, the job post or whatever, is possibly a scammer. I'm working very quietly, fairly discreetly with big tech on this kind of thing, because I've never had any luck in my life putting people on the spot. Any success I've had is building networks of networks to get people to work together.
I love that. And I also think that, you might be doing your own kind of social engineering. I mean, you are, when I think about internet history and I think about the websites that have defined our world and also helped me buy a car, get an apartment.
Yeah.
My best friend married off of Craigslist after a date at the Brattle Theater.
It's amazing. I mean, I've lived in apartments that I found on Craigslist. I've had cars that I found on Craigslist. You're right. It's incredible.
It's really the people's platform in a lot of ways. And so over the years, we've seen obviously copycat websites. Facebook Marketplace is almost a clone of Craigslist in a big way. And so I think it's not just that you're advocating for a solution that everybody has the capacity to do, right? But also that you're working with the companies. Google, in particular, has launched an Android, product that allows for this kind of digging to happen. And so I think it's really, incumbent upon people who are good at collaborating and coordinating to do those kinds of activities, like not just, yelling at people for doing the wrong thing, but also trying to help them figure out what the solution is that's the best way forward with the technology that we have today.
Yeah.
But I do think that Craig and I both have experienced the rise of deep fakes in such a way that you really do start to get scared that
Yeah.
it's not just the internet anymore. It's, there are all of these ways in which people are manipulating, trying to trick you, the disinformation that flows through these platforms. These are all intertwined problems.
Yeah. And just as you talk about the fact that AI is sort of supercharging the ability for the scamming to happen, Craig, you're hinting at the fact that AI also presents us with potential solutions. As we look at that and we talk about, the sort of companies, these big guys that you're talking about, are they right now incentivized to protect their customers? Like what's in it for them to deploy this technology to fight against scams as well?
It's all a moving target right now. I focus on, useful stuff that I can do for real. This means chatting with people inside the big companies who want to fight fraud and scam and encouraging them to do so and trying to figure out how everyone's expectation in the entire country will be that the big guys will work together to fight this kind of thing. I'm not the right guy to do this. I really am a nerd. I really do have very limited social skills, and that's why I work with a celebrity spokespuppet.
I mean, it's a good strategy, but I mean, speaking of networks, Joan, how did you and Craig come to be colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a very crazy life as a researcher. I tend to go after problems like Craig that I think there's a solution for and want to know more about the puzzle. And so I fell into this job as a research lead at Data and Society and was off to a conference at UPenn, and Craig happened to be there. And I, of course, was like, OMG.
You're like, it's that Craig?
It's the
Craig.
godfather of the internet right here, the internet as I know it. And we split a Diet Coke, had some really great conversations, and then he supported the organization that I was at, which was led by, and is still led by one of my mentors, Dana Boyd. And so Data and Society was a great opportunity for me to learn how to understand exactly what Craig is doing. How do you do research, understand what the problem is and the scope of solutions and the steps that you need to get there, but you can't do it alone. There's no research that's going to unlock, some kind of enlightenment for people. You have to have these sympathetic actors. And one of the things that I've found over the years in my research, and that I think Craig is nodding to, is that the engineers at these companies do not want to be known for grift, scams, hoaxes, riots, etc. And so there is this big incentive to try to improve at least the reputation of the companies as we learn about all of the newer issues that come before us.
As Joan mentioned, Craig, when you two met, you supported a project of hers. And speaking of support, you've been very open about how you see your role as a philanthropist. Why is that important to you, and why have you been so vocal about it?
Well, in general, the whole philanthropy thing is just me following through what I learned in Sunday school from a Mr. and Mrs. Levin at the Jewish Community Center in Morristown, New Jersey.
Tell us more.
Well, the deal is from them I learned that to know when enough is enough. And I've been very lucky with the company. And by accidentally doing the right thing and keeping it simple, I've exceeded my financial goals. I mean, I can live a comfortable life myself, help out my family, but beyond that, I don't really need the cash, and it just feels like a better thing to give it away. For example, a few years ago, I put all of my Craigslist equity, my stock, into a charitable foundation, so it's all gone. And I am spending it on things which help the country, with a big focus on online safety, and also with a big focus on helping out military families and vets, since I figure they sacrifice a lot to protect me, I should give back. So my deal is that I'm following through, I'm practicing what I preach. I do have to decide on how I'm going to do diligence for the next 20 years, reflecting that I'm already a really old guy, and I may have to embed myself in Craig GPT to conduct due diligence.
I can't even imagine what Craig GPT would be, but I would want to know, especially some of the stories that Craig tells. He doesn't think they're that funny, but
they're hysterical.
They're hysterical. Like when Craig was. Craig, you want to regale us with a tale of working customer service at Craigslist?
Oh, please. Please, Craig, give us one.
There's a lot of things which all blur together. Let's say I got a call around 25 years ago from the local office of a federal bureau, which asked me if I knew there was. Well, they asked me if I knew that there was an ad for plutonium on the site.
What?
I didn't know the law at that point, but I'd gotten a pretty good grounding on privacy and due process from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because I'd been a member for over 30 years. And I asked if it was okay for me to ask the poster, probably a kid, to turn themselves in. They said, fine. The kid did so, and to the best of my knowledge, the kid is still grounded.
That's a great story.
Yeah. No, it's just like but they're all like this, and it's so much fun. And but Craig, I had one question to you regarding this Take 9 initiative and where you think we should go in terms of public knowledge. Do you think this would be something that, 4th, 5th, 6th graders will take to heart, as well as, my Gen X heart, of course, is raised on Sesame Street. So, so I get it. But what do you think? How do you think it's going to
play with the youth?
Yeah. How do you think they're going to feel about it?
My deal is I personally don't know, not my skill set, but there's a Take 9 partnership, and it includes the folks at Girls Who Code running the K through 12 Alliance, where they are working on just that problem. How do you get kids alerted to this? And how do you get people to do practical things to stop problems? It's a cliche, but already kids are better at technology than their parents. So I have a feeling we're starting to see kids advising their families on this.
Well, I'd love to see a Scouts cybersecurity badge.
Oh, that's super cool. But I also wonder, just in general, because I think we're sort of in a time now where the internet and digital culture is sort of mature enough that there was a time, I think, where the notion was that, older folks didn't really understand how technology worked, and therefore they were more susceptible to scams, but kids were never, younger people were never going to get tricked. But I don't know that that's the world we're in now. I mean, I think this is as much of an issue for the youth as it is for adults and older adults. Am I wrong there, or do you see that way?
I think it's an issue for everyone. First, tangentially, I'll mention to Joan that the Girl Scouts do have cybersecurity merit badges.
Oh, yes.
One of my neighbors, she's 11 now, but she turned up a few years ago with the complete set.
Awesome.
I love it.
And scams and frauds are problems for everyone of all ages. That's why Network of Networks, not only at the Girls Who Code level, but one of the partners is AARP, and they already know a lot and are already giving seniors, including myself, a lot of good advice.
That reminds me, I have an email from AARP I got to answer about. They're updating their disinformation, generative AI section on their website. So I'm going to help them with that, because I think I'm a big fan of Craig, obviously, but I'm also a bigger fan of public education writ large. And I do think that, the internet, of course, is here to stay. These tools are going to get more powerful, both for scammers and for fraud detection. We got to carve out a way, though, that everyday users of the internet get access to that fraud detection as well. And, and it's a big issue right now, especially when, inflation's happening. A cheap pair of sneakers, is
when
going to
it's
really...
tough times. That's exactly right. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies, a Curiosity Desk contributor, and co-creator of the Beaver emoji, and Craig Newmark, entrepreneur, philanthropist, founder of both Craigslist and Take 9. You probably know how to find the former. The latter is at pausetake9. That's the number 9.org. That's pausetake9.org. Craig, Joan, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks. And
brings it full circle. After a quick break, he hosts the podcast History That Doesn't Suck, which we confirmed we are allowed to say on the air. Unlike, this is the Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, one Hollywood legend, one famous brownie recipe, and one very determined James Beard award-winning baker with a spreadsheet. Dorie Greenspan, longtime baking authority, joins us on Katharine Hepburn's much-debated brownie recipe, with clues from Fannie Farmer to the New York Times to Hepburn's own handwritten copy. Will the real Hepburn brownie be revealed? That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you
and the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, committed to simplifying college planning for families over 45 years with trusted guidance, interactive tools, step-by-step videos, and more. MEFA.org. And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Crosstrek is committed to keeping loved ones safe on adventures this summer. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We will be back at the library tomorrow. Think about joining us there. Well, we certainly love our history here in New England and on the Curiosity Desk. You got the American Revolution. You got the Celtics winning 10 titles in 11 years between 59 and 69. You got the Great Molasses Flood of 1919. And yeah, you have the invention of the Roomba. But if there's any beef to be had with history, it's that it can sometimes be dry and dusty, like the underside of your couch. Thankfully, our next guest hosts a podcast specifically about history that does not suck. It is called History That Doesn't Suck with Professor Greg Jackson. He's also got a new book out now. It's called Been There, Done That, How Our History Shows What We Can Overcome. And if that were not enough, he's got a live show. They're headed to the Somerville Arts at the Armory next Wednesday, June 17th, 6:30. artsatthearmory.org for info and tickets. Greg Jackson, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
You know, I want to start with the title, which I love. I love that you call your podcast History That Doesn't Suck. It's cool. The fact that, like, that joke lands, though, I think does suggest the fact that a lot of people, a lot of people's first reaction to history stuff is they're like, oh, history's boring. It sucks. Why do you think that is? What do you, why do you think history's got that reputation?
Man, it lands that way because we teach his names and dates. And I want to be clear, Edgar, I say this with love for a lot of our teachers out there.
Sure.
We ask them to get through way too much in too short of a time. They can't pick their book. They have to answer to the school boards, PTAs, you name it, which, not that these people don't mean well, but we handcuff our teachers in a number of ways. And then we tell them to teach to a test. And when you do all of that, you suck the story right out of it.
Yeah.
So, kids hear about Patrick Henry, for instance, right? They hear, give me liberty, give me death. They hear nothing about the context. They don't catch that this is a young legislator who sounds off against King George III and has the whole room bellowing that he's a traitor and, looking to possibly get himself killed right out the gate in what's going to become the revolution. We don't connect with them on this, individual level and realize that they're afraid, they're terrified, they don't know what their future is going to be like. So if we can treat historical figures like they're characters in a Marvel film, that's when history comes to life.
Yeah. And is that the vibe with the podcast, with your project? Is that sort of your approach, is to think of it more that way? And if so, how did you get there? How did you find your way to history, and then also find your way to saying, like, man, there's so much cool stuff here, we got to present this in another way?
It is the vibe. Man, I loved history even when I was a semi-checked out high school student. It was the one subject that just sucked me in. So I did major in it, despite my parents doing everything to talk me into something quote unquote sensible. Got the PhD, did all the academic stuff. And that's so crucial to where I ended up today, getting the PhD, becoming a tenured professor. I learned how to do rigorous, deep research, get my facts straight and right. But as I did all of that, I was just always a storyteller. That was kind of in me. So when I launched the podcast, I was very purposefully taking all that rigor and academic training that I had and throwing it into telling stories and making things come to life.
Well, we're here in Boston, Massachusetts, which, when it comes to American history, certainly American history at a certain period of time, which a lot of people are paying attention to right now as we come up on America 250, plenty of story. A little bit, plenty of stories to be told here. I mean, I wonder if you could talk us through some moments in history here, maybe some ones that aren't as widely told or widely remembered. We love the kind of more off the beaten path history here on the Curiosity Desk.
Sure. I mean, that's you have a few days, right? We're just going to make this the longest episode ever. Let me hit you.
What are some favorites?
Yeah. So this is from chapter 1 of my book. Been there, done that. Do you know who John Fenno is?
I do not, and I am also I majored in history when I was in college. One of my majors in college, and know a fair amount, but I don't know the name John Fenmo.
So John Fenno, Bostonian, well-educated, super fan of the United States in the midst of the Revolution, and a Federalist. That's where he comes down. So in the big debate over whether or not the Constitution is this great idea that's going to bring the states together and shore up this idea of liberty that the patriots have just fought for, or is it just a terrifying big government waiting to unleash the same tyranny that they just emancipated themselves from under King George III? That's what the anti-federalists think, right? There's that big debate, and that's where we get to the ratification of the Constitution. So John Fenno, he's on the Constitution side. He's a Federalist, and he polls for Massachusetts to ratify. By the way, just a quick aside, we're going to get back to our boy Johnny in just a second.
No, take us aside. We also love asides here on the Curiosity Desk.
Good, because asides and tangents is my jam. Massachusetts has the distinct honor of being the one state where, in the ratification debate, a full-on fist fight broke out.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Fist fight.
Oh, yeah.
We love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something that looks like something that maybe Matt Damon would want to make a movie about, right?
Does he make movies about Boston? Really? Maybe.
Well,
maybe one or two.
one or two. I'm reaching there, but fists flew. They were angry. They didn't agree on things, and that's all, again, to some of the points I try to make in the book. It's not all roses and sunshine. People didn't just always magically agree in the past. They had the same passions and worries that we do. But John, our boy John Fenno, he's a super fan of this new American Republic. So he leaves his beloved Boston. He takes off with 250 pounds in loans, cash that's been given to him by his friends. And let's keep in mind, there's no such thing as parties yet.
Yeah.
Right. So they've ratified the Constitution. Yeah, there's this concept of anti-federalists and federalists, but we don't have parties. So he goes to New York. I mean, first mistake, but he goes to New York, and this is the new capital of the United States, right out the gate. And he's going to report on this new federal government. He sees himself as filling a crucial, role, right? And as he starts reporting, well, he's a fan of things that are happening under the Washington administration. This includes creating a national bank. And as that point hits, that leads to a huge rupture with this other group in the federal government. They're going to be known as Jeffersonian Republicans pretty quick. And Thomas Jefferson thinks that this idea about this bank, very much put forward by Alexander Hamilton and very much supported by this New Englander who is now printing this national newspaper. Okay, and so here's another little tangent, a little side for you. This isn't just a New York-based paper run by a New Englander, right? He's gone to New York because this is the first capital of the United States, and he's got this crazy new idea, something that's never been done back into the colonial era before. Papers have been, sent around. That's fine, but he's actually offering subscriptions in the capitals of all 13 states. So this is our first national media presence.
Wow.
Made by a Bostonian.
Hey, sounds like
Right?
us. That sounds like us. I love
Absolutely.
that.
So this is the Gazette of the United States. That's what he calls it. But Thomas Jefferson is quickly convinced that this is a evil newspaper out to destroy American liberty as it pushes for this tyrannical federal government to strengthen its power through this new bank. So, Thomas Jefferson does something that, it should be crazy to us, but he apparently thought it was fine. He was the Secretary of State. He goes and gets another guy, Philip Freneau, and has him start a national newspaper, the National Gazette. Thomas Jefferson bankrolls this guy with funds from the State Department. Okay? That's how this newspaper happens.
Wow.
He puts the dude on the payroll as a translator. Never mind that Philip barely speaks 2 languages, English and French, but he's apparently the translator for the whole State Department. It's a small country back then.
Yeah.
But, you think maybe, I don't know, a third language might be a good idea for the general translator of the whole everything.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not his real job. He's really just got a fake position that gives Thomas Jefferson reason to use government funds to let him sit around, write, and produce a newspaper that's attacking the Washington administration.
Yikes.
Yeah. The Washington administration that Jefferson serves in.
Yeah.
So right out the gate, Edgar, we now have 2 national newspapers, because he does the same thing. He starts offering these subscriptions across all 13 states, and they are blasting each other, lobbying insults. The Gazette of the United States describes the National Gazette as the pretend friends but real enemies of America.
Wow.
The National Gazette says that Hamilton and John Fenno of the Gazette of the United States, that they want to enslave the nation through monarchical federalism. Pseudonyms, they write under fake names, basically like people get on social media today and blasting out whatever they want under a false name. It's the same sort of stuff.
I was gonna say, I see, the idea that you call your book "Been There, Done That." It is pretty clear. Just hearing that one story, you just kind of go like, yeah, okay. There's nothing new under the sun. Hey, tell us about what's going to happen at Arts at the Armory. What's your live show like?
Yeah, so this is a show that I wrote a few years ago. We've toured it across the country. We've been to 29 states and DC. And it's called The Unlikely Union. So I guess, storytelling and making history come to life is really where I started. And that was my major intention. I wanted to increase historical literacy. But what I've also kind of turned into is a historian who's trying to remind Americans that self-governance isn't always easy. And it never has been. And we've been through tough times and can get through today. So this live stage show, it's very much like my podcast. But a live experience. I am telling stories on stage with rich sound design. We've got crazy multimedia, everything from the lights to imagery. And I'm taking you through 100 years of American history in 100 minutes. We go from the Revolution through the Civil War with engrossing stories that will grab your attention and carry you. And the protagonist of this story is the Union. You'll come away seeing how insane the idea of even creating a union of 13 states was in the first place, how they got that crazy idea to actually come to life, and then all the many challenges of holding it together. And then, of course, we get to that existential crisis where we nearly have a very violent, bloody, deadly breakup. And of course, the only thing in that sentence to which nearly applies is the breakup, because it was violent, deadly. Right. It's the most gruesome period of our history. And so we come out the other side by the end of the show. Hate to give spoilers, but America pulls through. The secession doesn't work. And so people have, across the country, they've come out of this show. The feedback's just been phenomenal, saying, hey, that really did help me put into perspective that it's not dismissing your worries about today.
Sure.
But helping you realize that worries have always been there.
All right.
We've gone through some tough stuff.
Sounds like good stuff, and there's no better time than the summer on America 250 just outside of Boston to get this story. All right, we've been speaking with Greg Jackson, host of the podcast History That Doesn't Suck with Professor Greg Jackson. He's also the author, as we've been saying, of Been There, Done That, How Our History Shows What We Can Overcome, and live show coming next week, Somerville Arts at the Armory, Wednesday, June 17th, artsatthearmory.org for info and tickets. Greg, thanks again for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
It's been my pleasure.
Up next, we get to the bottom of whether there is a better way to board airplanes. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
Behind the roar of the World Cup, there's quiet work underway in Massachusetts. Planners, police, small businesses, cultural communities, all preparing for a moment bigger than any one match.
They're not playing halfway around the world, so it does make it extra special.
GBH News is digging into the systems, the pressures, and the possibilities that come with hosting the world. Get the full picture at gbhnews.org/World Cup.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village, now playing Nat Zigri's Mozart to Pop Chart, a theatrical concert exploring and exploding musical traditions. Tickets for Mozart to Pop Chart at capeplayhouse.com. And Innuendo in Natick, presenting Hunter Douglas Duet Architella PowerView shades for your home and office. Hunter Douglas PowerView automation, measured and installed by their technicians at Innuendo and Innuendo.com.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We will be back live at the library tomorrow, so join us there if you can. As for now, we turn our attention to everyone's favorite place, the airport. Why is it that it seems like every trip comes with longer lines, louder crying babies, and someone ahead of you who is taking even longer to put their bag in the overhead bin? Now, we're not the only ones thinking about this. We recently heard from Paul from West Roxbury. He wrote into the Curiosity Desk to ask, in boarding passengers, why don't airlines first board passengers from back to front? This would seem to be a more efficient approach with less crowding in the aisle. Well, we hear you, Paul. It's a great question, but I'm not 100% sure back to front is the fastest method. In a bit, we're going to chat with a man who created what he claims is the fastest tested boarding method. He's also an astrophysicist, so we're going to take him seriously and his work. His findings might not be what you expect, so hang in there. But for now, we're going to live in our frustrations with air travel for a moment with the one and only GBH transportation reporter Jeremy Siegel. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hello,
Good to have
Edgar.
you
asked
show.
why are there more crying babies in the airport, and I'm part of the reason. I do have a young baby who I'll be flying with for probably the 4th time later this summer. So if you hear crying at Logan, it's me.
There you go. All right. So you're a transportation reporter, which means you spend a fair amount of time in airports, talking with people who work at airports, all of that stuff. Is this a perception thing, or is travel getting a little bit more frustrating and difficult? What would you say?
I think it's a combination of the two. It's perceived on one level, but air travel internationally is at a peak right now. More people are flying by plane than ever. Here in Boston at Logan Airport, last year we had a record 43.2 million people going through the airport. So when you just think about the fact that we have the same infrastructure, right? The same airports like Logan Airport that's been around for a very long time, a lot of the same airplanes that have been flying for a while, but you have more and more people flying. It adds up, and it adds up to lines. It adds up to not feeling good at the airport. So it's perceived, but also the numbers back it up.
When we look at, if you look over the last few months, last year even, there's been a fair amount of tumult in the airline industry. I mean, we had, you had labor issues, you had government funding issues, we had the government shutdown, which impacted airports. We're hearing a lot about, the cost of oil because of the war in the Middle East, and that's making prices go up for everything, up to and including air travel. Where do things stand right now?
Right now, at the very least, we're not in the midst of a government shutdown, which makes things a little bit easier at the airport. But you're right, we have entered this period where essentially every year when the government needs to fund government agencies, you end up with a shutdown at airports, which leads to longer lines. Logan Airport at the TSA there has actually been pretty good at avoiding a lot of those lines. But overall, across the U.S., you have terrible lines when there's a shutdown. And then you also have this experience of people paying more and more for airlines. Historically, when you look at the prices decades and decades ago, air travel was expensive. But then we reached this period, going into the 90s and early 2000s when it felt pretty feasible to fly wherever you want. Now, because oil prices are skyrocketing due to the war in Iran, ticket prices are going up. You also have airlines unbundling things like checked bags where
yes, indeed.
If you want anything like to check your bag or choose your seat so that you can board a plane earlier, like we're going to get into in a little bit, you have to pay more money. And as I mentioned, Iran, it's particularly hit airlines because jet fuel, it's a small portion of these barrels of oil. It's harder to make. There are fewer reserves of it internationally. So when you have a crisis hitting fuel like the Strait of Hormuz in Iran right now, it leads to prices for jet fuel skyrocketing unlike anything else. So the price at the pump is up, but the price for jet fuel is up way more, and that's being passed straight along to customers.
Okay, well, you said the magic word, which is boarding. So as promised, we're going to turn our attention to Paul from West Roxbury's question, which was, how come we don't board the planes from back to front? Paul seems to think this would be the more efficient method. Our next guest can definitely answer this and more. He was so fed up with how slow boarding was, he created what he claims is the optimal method for boarding, and he tested it to make sure he was right, and he named it after himself. Well done, sir. Jason Steffen is an associate professor of physics at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and the creator of the aforementioned Steffen method of boarding airplanes. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So why did you take this on? Was it simply you were like, there's a better way to do this and I'm going to figure out what it is?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I thought about it for a few years. You're mowing the lawn and that's when you solve all the world's problems, at least all the important ones.
That or the shower, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I decided that either I needed to solve the problem or stop thinking about it and move on to something else.
So you went with the solve it. All right, and I like that. All right, so our friend Paul from West Roxbury wrote in. Paul seems to think we should be going from back to front, which is something they do in some places. I've been on
some
planes
airlines
in Europe
do that.
where they've done back to front. What say you, Jason?
That's what I thought as well. Going into I just figured that would be obvious and that it would be the right answer. And then it turned out to be exactly the wrong answer.
Really?
The only way to do it worse than boarding from back to front is to board from the front to the back.
Okay, so we do it the worst, but not the second worst.
Yeah. So the issue is that when you board from the back to the front, initially the line does move faster because the line moves from the airport into the airplane itself.
Gotcha.
But then the thing that actually prevents an individual person from sitting down is the person in front of them. And when you board strictly from the back to the front, you're trying to get 12 passengers into one row, or I'm sorry, 6 passengers into one row.
Right.
And so that takes up 6 basically spots in the aisle. And the rest of the aisle is just sitting there idle, not doing anything but being a decoration for everybody to look at. And so to board efficiently, you want anyone that's in the aisle of the airplane to be putting their luggage away and sitting down and getting out of the way of the person behind them. And the most efficient way to do that is to have people board so that they're roughly uniformly spread throughout the aisle, and you can have a dozen people putting away their luggage at the same time instead of 2.
Okay. So, all right. So yeah, walk us through now then what the Steffen method is. Give us the hallmarks of the Steffen method. How would you board the plane?
So, if you want to do it for speed, the best way to do it is to first figure out how much personal space everybody needs to maneuver their luggage.
Okay.
I estimated that would be 1 extra row. So I need the row that I'm sitting in and the row next to it. to be able to put my luggage away.
Okay.
And then you send people in so that they are spaced every other row. So you'd send in all of the even numbered rows on the right-hand side of the airplane window seat, and then you go to the left-hand side, and there's a bunch of things that are effectively equivalent, but it's basically you have every other row, people who are adjacent in line are 2 rows apart from each other, and then you can optimally use the aisle.
So evens then odds, essentially, or something like that.
Yeah.
How did you test? How did you work this out? How did you test this?
I was contacted by a person who was going to make a TV show. So this was back when Mythbusters was still really common, still ongoing. I was contacted by John Hotchkiss, who wanted to make a show called This Versus That, which was a direct comparison of different ways of doing things. And so we rented out, when I say we, I mean he, rented out a Hollywood soundstage. It's the same soundstage. Basically, there's a piece of an airplane inside of a warehouse. And they filmed Airplane in it and a few other movies. And then we got a bunch of Hollywood extras with bags and said, okay, here's the first method. And we tested 5 different boarding methods, including back to front.
Yeah.
And then the method that I stumbled across ended up being the fastest. And then a little bit later, Southwest Airlines, well, it wasn't Southwest Airlines, it was PBS, Make It Faster with David Pogue.
Okay.
They contacted me, and my method went head to head against Southwest Airlines, which was the fastest at the time, the industry standard. And I was about 30% faster than Southwest Airlines as well.
30% faster than Southwest Airlines, and their method was the Southwest method was what? How was theirs different than how we board?
So historically, I guess they're evolving now, but historically their method was the airplane's open, get on board.
Yeah, it's kind of random, right?
Yeah. And so it's not totally random. Like random would be that in order to get random, you'd have to have the seats assigned, and then you send people in a random order. It's kind of this evolving thing where you come in and you make your decision based upon
what you see. It's like no assigned
see.
seating, or very rarely assigned seating. Yeah, and you beat it by 30%, which is interesting. So have you pushed? Has anybody adopted this? Have you talked to airlines about adopting your method, Jason?
I have talked to a few people at different airline companies about maybe making modifications to the way that they do things, with zero progress.
Zero progress. Okay, yeah, jump in, Jeremy.
I think the reason that there's zero progress is that at the end of the day, airlines want to make money, and they make money off of having people pay more for first class seats, and then the levels going down until you don't get to choose your seat. And like Southwest, used to do it this more efficient way. Now they're to assigned seating, and Southwest also used to be the airline that let bags fly free. You didn't have to pay for checked bags.
Those were the days, weren't
they? The way that any airline goes that starts charging more money, basically every airline follows. So I think it's like amazing that there's this theoretical way to do it so well, but I personally, as someone who covers the airline industry, think we'll probably, unfortunately, never see the Steffen method in practice.
Yeah, well, and that was, the intent in figuring out what it is. It doesn't matter necessarily if it's convenient. It just matters that it's fastest.
Right.
Because then it's real easy to just say, oh, there's always room for improvement, and so you can do nothing. But if you don't actually know how much room there is for improvement, then you don't know if it's worth investing in making a change.
Well, so Jason, I mean, if you know your method is the fastest, like what is the downside of it? I mean, all things have a downside. So like it may be faster, but what is it more inconvenient? You're breaking families up, or like if they're sort of sitting not right next to each other or whatever. What's the potential downside of your method?
The potential downside, I don't know that there's many downsides.
You're like, it's actually perfect.
Because it's not like it's that hard to overcome a lot of the concerns that people have. So you have a family, okay, so they board together.
Yeah.
And it makes a small change. Or you have first class, and so that they board first as well. So it's not that difficult to adapt my method to fit, whatever the demands are of the industry at the time. I do think, eventually it just turns into boarding randomly. Like if you keep making individual changes, eventually it turns into boarding randomly,
Right.
which is still faster.
it's faster than
Which
what's
is
done
still
right
faster.
now. Yeah.
But it does strike. I mean, you can imagine one airline at some point going like, you know what, we're going to make our thing. We're the fastest boarding airline, and even if you're going to lose some money from the upgradings and all of the stuff that you can do, maybe you gain a competitive advantage there. I could see it happening.
Yeah, I think the other issue is that just because you save 5 minutes at a gate doesn't translate necessarily into being able to use your equipment more effectively.
Right.
So, because you'd have to somehow accumulate all of those 5-minute savings across your network to turn into one extra flight of one airplane and one crew.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's like everybody got on the plane really fast, and then you just sit on the
wait.
tarmac while you wait to get
Yeah,
cleared.
so there's a bit more optimization than just getting, the military might care
Yeah.
about boarding quickly.
All right.
The places that really would benefit from it would be like Hawaiian Airlines or the Philippines or something like that, where you have a lot of short flights where the boarding process is a substantial fraction of the leg.
All right.
If you're flying to Tokyo from Chicago, it doesn't really matter if you have extra 5 minutes.
Well, we hold out hope for your method to be adopted somewhere. We've been speaking with GBH's Jeremy Siegel and the man behind the Steffen method, astrophysicist Jason Steffen. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you, Edgar.
And we've got Jared. Jared, do you like boarding planes? Do you
Let me
wish you
just
could
say
get
this.
on? Yeah.
It would all be much smoother and faster if you just let me on the plane first.
That's the Bowen method,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's the Bowen method. I like it.
Tried and true.
What's on the show today, Jared?
This is a fun one. Dorie Greenspan, the James Beard Award-winning cookbook author, has gone down the Katharine Hepburn brownie rabbit hole.
Oh.
Because there are myriad Katharine Hepburn brownie recipes on the internet, on the New York Times, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a hand in this because I have a copy of her handwritten brownie
You
recipe.
do?
I do.
How did you get that?
Well, tune in.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Then Susanne Ebbinghaus joins us about Celtic art across the ages. You'd be very surprised that it's not limited to Ireland. You can find Celtic art as far as Slovenia.
Oh, amazing.
So we'll tell those stories. And then it's cocktail time at the Culture Show.
Oh,
We start with
it's the
brownies
best
and
time.
with Aperol Spritz. Jackson Cannon is back for summer cocktails.
All right, you're not going to want to miss that. That's Jared Bowen and the Culture Show coming your way shortly. That's it for us here on the Curiosity Desk. Thanks to the crew. We're at the library tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herlick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Maine Maritime Museum, offering oyster tasting cruises throughout the summer. Visitors can learn about aquaculture from Maine's oyster farmers and experience freshly shucked oysters. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. Andrea Bocelli is the most successful classical crossover artist in popular music, and he's joined by Ed Sheeran, Shania Twain, and others to celebrate his 30-year career on Great Performances Andrea Bocelli 30th, The Celebration. Tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, winner of 4 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH, what matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, one Hollywood legend, one very famous brownie recipe, and one very determined James Beard Award winner with a spreadsheet. Dorie Greenspan joins us about her fudgy and forensic investigation into Katharine Hepburn's much-recounted brownie recipe. Greenspan's sleuthing took her from old cookbooks to newspaper lore to a handwritten copy that's raised delicious new questions. From there, we're on to warriors, poets, and the objects behind the myths. Harvard Art Museum's curator Susanne Ebbinghaus joins us to discuss Celtic art across the ages, an exhibition tracing 2,500 years of Celtic art, from jewelry, weapons, and monuments to the myriad ways later generations and artists reinvented Celtic identity. And we top it all off by topping one off. Cocktail legend Jackson Cannon returns with his bar cart, raising a glass to summer by way of cool cocktails, seasonal spritzes, and low-proof pours. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. I'm Jared Bowen, and this is Katharine Hepburn.
Henry, I have a confession.
Yeah.
I don't much like our children. Only you, the child I raised but didn't bear.
You never cared for me?
I did and do, believe me. Henry's bed is Henry's province. He can people it with sheep for all I care, which on occasion he has done.
That exchange alone is why I'm an Epic fan. The Hollywood legend is known for a lot of things. Her record 4 Oscars, the style, and the Yankee spine. And in certain chocolate-loving circles, she's also known for her brownies. Or maybe we should say the brownie recipes. Because as Dorie Greenspan recently discovered, the famed Hepburn brownie recipe has been passed from kitchen to kitchen, newspaper to cookbook, friend to friend. Along the way, it's also been subject to variations, contradictions, and a little movie star mythology. There are versions with cocoa, versions with chocolate, versions linked to the New York Times and Fanny Farmer. And then there is the handwritten recipe I sent Dorie after she was last on this show, a recipe that helped send her down the Katharine Hepburn brownie rabbit hole. Dorie Greenspan is a James Beard Award-winning cookbook author, longtime baking authority, and the writer behind the Substack XOXO Dorie. Her latest book is Dorie's Anytime Cakes. Welcome back to the Culture Show, Dorie. Great to see you, and I love that we're picking up right where we left off when you were last here.
Exactly. Hello, I'm glad to be here. And Jared, you are my muse. You are my Katharine Hepburn brownie muse. When you sent me that handwritten recipe, it was so exciting. Also, just a little weird. It was kind of scribbled out in places. I have it because you sent it to me. I was able to put it into the XO Dorie newsletter. But I looked at it and thought, this isn't the recipe that I was told. Yeah, it was Katharine Hepburn's.
Well, this is, and so for the background is, I remember you were on the show and then we just talked and talked and talked after, and somehow brownies came up and Katharine Hepburn came up because I have the brownie recipe. And I should point out for people who are wondering why I have the recipe, it's because it's in the archives of the Harvard Gottlieb archives at Boston University. And years ago, when I was working on the TV side of things, I was producing a television story, and the archivist there, Perry Barton, realized that I loved Katharine Hepburn, and he mimeographed, photocopied this recipe and sent it along to me. So, and this is why I've always been curious all these years, because everybody purports to have the recipe, but here we have it in her own handwriting. And this is where you ran with it, because you had a version in your own cookbook years ago.
So in 2003, there was a story in the New York Times. And it was a young woman who said that she was going to Bryn Mawr College, where Katharine Hepburn went to school. She was miserable. She wanted to quit. Her father ran into Hepburn. I hope I'm remembering this all just so. Ran into Hepburn in the supermarket and thought, maybe she could talk to my daughter and convince her not to quit. And in fact, there was a meeting. And during the meeting, Katharine Hepburn served brownies. And later, I think Hepburn had an accident, and the Bryn Mawr student's father went to visit her and brought her brownies. And it was not to her, those brownies were just not to her liking.
Oh boy.
And that's when she gave him the recipe and also told his daughter 3 things: never quit, be yourself, and don't put too much flour in the brownies. And so it was from that recipe that was in the Times that I made my recipe. And I thought, oh, this is great. These are terrific brownies. Then your recipe comes along and it's different. And then I check another recipe that claims it, and that one's different too.
So, well, of course, we'll never completely get to the bottom of this because, sadly, Katharine Hepburn is long gone. But what have you begun to piece together? You know, we should point out you have a spreadsheet and everything regarding your exploration. You're holding it up right now for those watching on our YouTube stream. What have you begun to piece together about the Hepburn brownies, where there may be similarities and why there may be such varied differences?
So I'm not sure. You sent me a letter from the archivist that said he didn't want to disappoint you and the rest of us, but he didn't think it was Katharine Hepburn's original, that the recipe was original to her, that he thought it came from Fanny Farmer. And I checked Fanny Farmer, and the 1976 version, like the 1946 version, is really close to what Hepburn had. But Hepburn used bittersweet chocolate, and that's what struck me in the recipe, because in the way back days, it was unsweetened chocolate. And the New York Times says cocoa. Can I jump to the bottom line?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they're all good brownies.
Yeah. Well,
oh, so good.
Well, let's dive into this and what makes a good brownie, because you and I had this wonderful email exchange, and we got very existential about this in terms of what makes a good brownie. But, well, I admitted that I love something that's not cakey, something that it's not overly crisp. I love it to be super moist and chocolatey and gooey. And from the version I've been making based on this handwritten recipe, that's what I get.
That's what you get. And clearly you and Kate Hepburn share a love of a particular kind of brownie. So for those who can see, this is is it there?
Yep.
This is the Kate Hepburn brownie. I didn't add nuts, which, I can just imagine what she would say to me, because it appeared that nuts were really important to her. I didn't add them.
And I should point out, I never add them either. I do not. Nuts are fine. I eat them all the time, but not in a brownie.
Well, I kind of like them, but there were family squabbles about the nuts, but never mind. So this brownie, it's very thin. This is the Hepburn brownie. It's about an inch high. And if it's made with, she only uses 2 ounces of bittersweet chocolate. It's not as chocolatey as we've come to think brownies should be. And it's interesting because, of course, our tastes have changed. What we're looking for has changed. So it's so much fun to make a recipe that's not modern, but still so delicious. So this one actually turns out to be kind of chewy. And you get more chocolate flavor than you would think you would get with just 2 ounces. I don't have my cocoa brownie. I gave it away. But I have. Well, that's what you're supposed to do with things you bake. But this is my friend David Leibovitz's version of Katharine Hepburn's brownie. David he's revised a book of his. It's called The Great Book of Chocolate, and it was just published. And so as soon as I saw his brand, I had to make it. So the edge is falling off. I think I'll have to taste it.
Yeah, that's good. I know. I was saying to our team, I should have made my version today too, because all of this conversation about brownies. Well, what does it do to not, you just mentioned not very much flour. What changes?
So that's how you get the texture that you like, right? Let me just say something about this brownie, the David Leibovitz brownie. It's delicious, but it's got twice as much chocolate in it, and it has unsweetened chocolate. So Kate's brownie is a sweeter brownie because there's some sugar in the chocolate, and the same amount of sugar in all the recipes across the spreadsheet. So if you add, sorry, there were crumbs. If you add more flour, you get a cakier brownie. And as we know, the rule number 3 from Katharine Hepburn was don't put too much flour in your brownies.
Yeah.
So there's really a very little amount of flour compared to chocolate and eggs and sugar.
For people just tuning in, I'm speaking with Dorie Greenspan, the James Beard award-winning cookbook author, longtime baking authority, and the author behind Substack XOXO Dorie, because she's just gone down the Katharine Hepburn brownie rabbit hole for her latest Substack entry. By the way, for her book, her latest book is Dorie's Anytime Cakes. You can hear that conversation on our podcast. Before we go back to the brownies and baking and thinking about chocolate, you yourself are a big Katharine Hepburn fan. Did you ever have the chance to meet her or encounter her in Connecticut?
So I didn't meet her. I saw her, and I was like a foot away from her, and I was too shy to say anything. So Katharine Hepburn lived in a community, Fenwick. It's called Fenwick Borough. It's just off of Old Saybrook. It's part of Old Saybrook, actually. And on Old Saybrook's Main Street, there used to be Patrick's General Store. And that's where I saw her. And she was, just seeing her was a thrill because she was much older than we see her in film. But that style, that casualness, that the way she just, I'm doing it because I'm not Katharine Hepburn, but I can't even mention it without doing it. The way she would put her hands in her pocket and slouch. She was wearing, it was summer, she was wearing a big sun hat. And when I told people that I had seen her in this area, they said, oh yeah, we see her all the time. She was a local figure. She got her, I don't know about her start, but pretty close early on when she was 24, she appeared in the Ivoryton Playhouse, which is like 3 miles up the road from me. And now there is a theater with her name, the Kate, the Katharine Hepburn Cultural Center. So she was really a big part of this community.
I mean, if I could ever, sometimes ask that question, who would you want to interview if you had the opportunity, living or dead? And especially on the deceased side, it would definitely be Katharine Hepburn. Although I think I would have been like you. I'm not sure I would have gone up to her because she was a pretty formidable presence.
But, you know, had I known about her brownies then, well, I couldn't just drive around town with brownies at the ready for the time I might meet her. But she was just always around. And when I said something to the owner of Patrick's, he was like everybody else. Oh yeah, she's often here.
Well, to go back to the brownies, and I've had this conversation over the years too, everybody thinks they have the one. And as I said in the introduction, it's gone from kitchen to kitchen, friend to friend, book to the New York Times. A lot of people cite the New York Times recipe. What do you think it is about the allure of Katharine Hepburn and brownies that has so many people having these conversations?
So, Jared, I was thinking about this. There's certainly an allure to Katharine Hepburn, no question, right? And we all love brownies. But this association, do you think it was because it was so unlikely to see this, as you said, formidable actor, person, woman making brownies? Do we know if she cooked anything else? Was this just her thing because the journalist whose files you were looking at was doing a story about Katharine Hepburn, a cover story for Ladies' Home Journal, and she gave him the recipe and served brownies. Was this the thing? Was this her signature dish? Come to my house and you get brownies? Don't you wonder? Do you know?
I don't know, but I think that as you were talking, it occurred to me that it's exactly what you were talking about just seeing her and the style that she had. And now I'm doing the gesturing too, because she had those collars, and she just had such a great way of creating architecture around her presence. And I think that people want to have some sort of association, and if making brownies can put you any level closer to Katharine Hepburn and that style and that grace and that mythology, then why not do it? Especially because I don't know if I shared this part with you. I don't cook or bake very much, but this is one thing I can do, and it's a very easy thing to do, which makes me also wonder if she didn't do a lot of her own cooking. I remember seeing the Katharine Hepburn documentary years ago, and she had a pretty close team around her. I'm not sure she did a lot of her own cooking.
Well, you mentioned easy. The whole recipe is really just stirred. Oh, I like your collar up. You can leave it.
I should put it back up for the rest. I'll be Katharine Hepburn-esque for the rest of the segment.
It's all mixed in a saucepan. It's really a beginner's recipe. It also made me think that if this was her signature party, almost party trick, right? Come to my house, I give you brownies. I'll give you the recipe, as she did in at least 2 cases that we know of. It made me think about all the rest of us and the fun of having a signature dish, of having something. It can be Katharine Hepburn's brownies, or it can be anything that you love that you get to be known for. I just think that's really fun.
Well, we talked about this to some degree with your last book, but do you have one that becomes more of your default than anything else?
Well, I used to make, I still do, but not as religiously as I used to. If you came to my house, you got either, well, depending on the hour, champagne or white wine, and gougere, which are cheese puffs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that was my hello, here, welcome, you're here. And I became known for that. And then then I just can't resist playing around. And so I was making little cheese, like I'm going like this because I can't find a word for it, but like little puffs that weren't gougere. Or I have the chocolate cookies that I make. I think it's nice if people know you for something.
So where do you go now that you've gone down this rabbit hole? What do you do with the information, and where do the brownies sit with your baking future?
Well, I will be I went back and I made my brownies again. My brownies, which I called a tribute to Katharine Hepburn. And they were the Times recipe. But as I said, I can't resist playing around. I added a little espresso powder, a little cinnamon. I think I added more salt. And I know I added chopped chocolate, and I think she would approve. It just made it more chocolatey. When I wrote Baking from My Home to Yours, which came out in 2006 and has the tribute brownies, I had 19 brownie recipes in the book.
Wow.
So I loved them then. I love them now. I'm not giving up on brownies. I'll keep playing.
Well, I played a little bit too at one point, and it started adding bourbon and sea salt, which makes for a very good brownie too. And I'm thinking she might approve of that as well.
Ooh, do you like raisins?
I kind of feel about raisins. I love raisins individually, but I kind of feel the same, that they don't belong in a brownie. Is that horrible?
No, it's not horrible. I was just thinking you could flame the raisins in bourbon and then put them in. But keep going the way you're going.
If I did that, I would have to call the fire department before I even started, because I don't think that would end well. Well, Dorie Greenspan, we're gonna have to find another task so that we have you on the show back on the show as sooner rather than later.
I was so happy that I got to meet you, and so happy that we could talk again. Find something for me. I'd love to come back.
All right, we'll work on this. But you said you have a maybe. Is there something else there hanging in the future?
I'm working.
Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll email off air. Dorie, great to see you, and thank you for this very chocolatey begin to the show. It's been really fun.
Thanks. Happy brownieing.
Dorie Greenspan is a James Beard Award-winning cookbook author, longtime baking authority, and the writer behind the Substack XOXO Dorie. Her latest book is Dorie's Anytime Cakes. And for people who are just watching, we put the recipe up. We'll post these. Dorie has posted as well, so you can see a lot of what we were referencing, so people can play around with brownies themselves. Again, thank you. And coming up, we are going to be talking about 2,500 years of Celtic art and imagination. That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Years ago, Massachusetts ignited the revolution. GBH News is bringing together the people, the places, and pivotal moments that took Massachusetts from colony to Commonwealth.
We all really think it's important to get the history out there.
There's a little bit of a feeling of being plunged back into history because you're right here where it really happened.
Discover the stories at gbh.org/America250. Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Brookmeadow at Cobb Center, an assisted living community offering wellness, care, and support services, including an on-site fitness specialist to help seniors stay physically active. More at brookmeadowslr.com. And Hunter Higgs LLC, presenting Black Cat, a new play by Dan Hunter, a drama exploring science, Parkinson's disease, memory, and discoveries of the soul. June 18th through June 28th. Ticket information at bostonplaywrights.org. And Cambridge Savings Bank, where they are committed to your financial well-being, and community is at the core of everything they do. Cambridge Savings Bank, always you. More at CambridgeSavings.com, member FDIC.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The Celts have been cast as warriors, mystics, and poets. Depending on the century, they have been whatever Europe needed them to be. Now, a new exhibition at the Harvard Art Museums looks past the legends to the objects they left behind: jewelry, weapons, and carved stone. Also, a legacy of images that stretch across more than 2,500 years of art and imagination. Celtic art across the ages brings together nearly 300 objects from Europe and North America, tracing how Celtic cultures took shape, how they were described by Greek and Roman writers, and how they inspired later generations in art, literature, and design. What emerges is not one story of one people, but a shifting history of art, identity, and imagination. Susanne Ebbinghaus is the curator of ancient art at the Harvard Art Museums and one of the curators of Celtic art across the ages, on view through August 2nd. That museum, by the way, is always free in terms of admission. Susanne, welcome to The Culture Show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to go even deeper on this with you. I had the fortune of walking around with you and the co-curators not too long ago to see this show. And I think that many people will be surprised to understand how sprawling Celtic art is and the Celtic culture is, because it goes well beyond Ireland and Scotland.
Yeah, and I think that is really perhaps the most surprising, that when we think about things Celtic here today, of course, yes, we think about the Celtics. Then we think about Ireland, Scotland, Celtic languages, knotwork perhaps. But there is this whole ancient Celtic world, Celtic being a term that Greeks and Romans used to talk about their northern neighbors, people who lived in France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria. They applied this term. These were people that were actually creating wonderful art, but it is very different from the art of Greece and Rome. And I think just has not received much attention beyond Europe. And even European colleagues say, look, everybody always talks about Roman art. What about the art of the ancient people of Central and Western and also then Northwestern Europe?
Well, is it as simplistic as the Greek and Romans thought that their northern neighbors were uncivilized people and an uncivilized culture? Did that just carry through the way that history has not remembered the Celts the way they have the Greeks and Romans?
I think that is very much part of it. The other thing is that these cultures, largely the local populations, they operated orally. It's not that they didn't have traditions, that they didn't have stories, but it was transmitted orally. They didn't put longer texts to writing. So all we have is short inscriptions. And yes, they're very often in a Celtic language, written in borrowed alphabets, but they don't tell us so much. And so it's a classic story, I think, of the history is written by the winners, right? The history is written by the Greeks, and then the Romans who conquer Gaul, for example, being a prime, territory considered Celtic. And so these are the stories we hear of these neighbors that in the early 4th century BCE actually sacked Rome. So talk about trauma, talk about wariness of these northern neighbors, but also you don't really know much about them. And I think as people began to study the ancient world here, and as people began to imagine a past, initially what they had the Bible and they had the classical authors. And then archaeology came in, and excavation happens in the course of the 18th and certainly 19th and 20th century. Archaeology takes shape as a science, and so we begin to be able cautiously to write history from artifacts and from very intricate artifacts at that. And so we are beginning to understand that there were people who had their own artistic world and approaches and worldviews that, yes, we are trying to get closer to through what survives.
Well, as you talk about excavation, this is one of the interesting points, that it was the expansion of the Charles de Gaulle Airport, again, in France. We're not talking about Ireland and Scotland. In fact, you point out with a map as we enter the exhibition that these objects are found as far as Slovenia, so all across Europe. What turned up at Charles de Gaulle, for example, that we find in this show?
Yeah, that is such a wonderful story because we have some truly Parisian artifacts from about 2,300 years ago. I didn't know either. The name Paris derives from the ancient Celtic-speaking population that lived around what is today France's capital, the Parisii. And we have remains of settlement, we have remains of cemeteries, and I should say that it is very often tombs that have revealed these really intricate objects that were buried with the elites of the time. And so when Charles de Gaulle Airport was expanded in 1999, a very richly equipped burial of a man was found who was buried with a chariot, richly decorated with bronze objects, that this alloy of copper and tin that would have been kind of golden colored and shiny in antiquity, and now is maybe a little more dull and greenish, brownish, but still very impressive. And there's this one enigmatic object, an open work roundel, exquisite craftsmanship, very detailed, and it is, if you look closely, at first you think, oh, it's lots of swirly patterns, perhaps plants, and then you look more closely and you discover, I think now I've counted over 20, with the help of our visitors who point out new features, I've counted over 20 fantastic creatures that, for a lack of a better term, scholars have called them dragons. They're all kinds of funny creatures depicted through their whole bodies or maybe only part bodies. Some of us think we see birds there too. So a kind of shape-shifting universe that at the same time is very carefully geometrically constructed. And I think these are some of the characteristics of this ancient Celtic art of around the mid-first millennium BCE is, on the one hand, this really careful composition and construction that then begins to take on plant forms. And then if you look at it, then suddenly you see a duck, or you see a bird's head, or you see a fantastic creature. And so a kind of really a shape-shifting, very intricate art that we just wished we knew more about how they were interpreted, how these creatures, what they were called, but we don't.
I'm speaking with Susanne Ebbinghaus, who's the curator of ancient art at the Harvard Art Museums and one of the curators of Celtic art across the ages, which is on view now at the museums through August 2nd. The Harvard Art Museums, always free admission, I might add. So how would you describe, because we put this in the context of Greek and Roman art, how would you describe the visual vocabulary of the Celtic cultures?
Yeah, so, when we think about ancient art, we think Greece, Rome, Egypt, Mesopotamia. These are all artistic traditions that really put the human figure at the center. Where we find monumental art carved in stone. What we find when we go to Central, Western, Northwestern Europe is these portable objects that had a utilitarian function as well, arms, armor, horse trappings, chariot decoration, but also jewelry, of course, drinking vessels. And that is covered in this intricate ornament that probably made these special ceremonial objects that lent them a special power, a protective power, perhaps. And so that tradition isn't trying to imitate nature. It's creating a world of its own in a very different, more abstract, you want to say, perhaps, artistic vocabulary. And it's initially very foreign to us, and I think we just have to take the time and immerse ourselves. And in the exhibition, we have these large graphics created by our exhibition designer, Robert Kecke, that really invite you to see, oh, this was constructed that way. This is the underlying. And so I think I noticed with myself, as I kept looking at these, they suddenly started to make sense, and I saw more things. I began to see more creatures, more things morphing. I should also say that we should probably be talking about different Celtic arts. So we are talking about a huge span of time from the earlier first millennium BCE really into the early medieval period to about 1200. That's some 2,000 years of art. And so obviously the world changed, but you have these motifs being current in quite a large swath of Europe. But of course they're changing, and their meaning changes in the early medieval period. a lot of this art actually is associated with, Bibles, psalters. It's associated with this church. So definitely forms change, meanings change, and there's new inspiration coming from neighbors. No art exists in isolation.
Well, I want to ask about the inspiration that came much, much later in the last 100, 200 years. But as you pointed out to me, there became whole cultures that went back and looked at this art. It inspired them. And I was very intrigued when you told me that the surrealists of the 20th century began looking at Celtic art and carried it forward in their own art.
Absolutely. And they actually became fascinated with Celtic coins and that abstraction. That's what my colleague Laure Morest, our coin curator, always points out. These initially Celtic imitations of Greek coins show that, yes, Celtic artists could very easily create these naturalistic forms, but they had no interest in it. They went off and did their abstraction. So in different regions of Europe, for different reasons, people were looking back to their past. In France, people look back to Vercingetorix, who led the Gauls against the Roman army and ultimately were defeated by Julius Caesar. So there is this embrace of the ancient Celtic ancestors there. And then you have the modern Celtic-speaking world. And I should say that we talk about Celtic languages because at some point around 1700, scholars noticed that the modern spoken languages of Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Brittany, Cornwall are related to the little we know about the languages that these people, that Greeks and Romans called Celts, that they were speaking. And so then the name was applied to the entire language family. So this is the connection when you're wondering just how do we get from the European continent in antiquity to Ireland and Scotland in medieval times and modern times. This is how there's this language connection. So as people got interested in their own past, in their own identity, we have a revival in Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, of the languages, of looking at folklore, literature being inspired by these traditional folklore motifs, a revival in music. Today we had a wonderful harp performance and demonstration at the museum in the exhibition, but then also in artistic forms. And
I want to ask about that too, and I should point out that you have a host of programming throughout this exhibition to bring people into the galleries and to expand and lift up these art forms in all manners. But one of the things that was so interesting that you showed me as well, it was a piece of jewelry. It was a bracelet. And this is the great thing about your museum at Harvard University. You're a teaching museum, so you incorporate the students who looked at this bronze bracelet and essentially recreated it. And it was striking to me. You can remind me of the age, probably at least 1,000 years old, that looked like something that anyone would strive to have today because it looked so contemporary and so gorgeous.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was really an effort to show what these bronze, so alloy of copper and tin artifacts would have looked like before they were in the ground. And in this case, this is a bracelet fragment, probably from northern Italy, that was in the ground for some 2,300 years. And a colleague in our science lab, Celia Chari, took some samples, analyzed it, and then worked together with a colleague at MIT, Mike Tarkanian, to actually recreate a bracelet of the same shape and with the exact same alloy. And it was so striking. It's so wonderful, golden and shiny. And I think we included it in the exhibition together with a video of how it was made and how this ancient bracelet would have been made as well, to kind of show our visitors, yes, you have to imagine these objects golden and shiny. And of course, you also have to imagine them in motion on a horse or on a person and, with changing angles of lighting. And
so, speaking of the horse, they ornamented their horses and their ponies in pretty fabulous ways.
Yeah, you're referring to the pony cab. And here I should just give a shout out to our European lenders because we have loans from all these European countries. And so in some cases, colleagues have really sent their treasures across the Atlantic. And that includes this fabulous pony cap from the National Museum Scotland in Edinburgh that was found in a drained loch in Scotland. And yes, it was initially scholars thought, oh, maybe this was a piece of horse armor. No, it's a fancy cap for a pony. The pony probably drew a chariot, and it's a horned cap with swirling decoration. And what I love is that this horned cap does the same to the pony, namely it transforms the pony into a fabulous creature. And so you have this shape-shifting that you have in Celtic art itself, in Celtic ornament, actually happening, to that pony.
Which I love. Although I had an Appaloosa pony named Friday growing up, and I don't think Friday would have enjoyed having a pony cap on him. Maybe they adjust to it. Well, final question for you. As you said, there's so much to learn. There's so much still to find. So what happens with this exhibition now as we begin to look even more deeply into this widespread culture and art?
Well, first of all, what I really hope, I just invite everyone to come and immerse themselves. What stunned me, and you have heard from my accent that I'm German actually, and in Europe, these things are found regularly. So I just visited an exhibition on Celtic art in France. My English colleague Penny Coombe just visited one in Denmark. So in Europe, this exhibition happens, but here, as it happens, this is the first major exhibition on this topic, and I found that really stunning. So
You mean here in the United States?
Here in the United States, and so I'm really excited that it was that we could do this, and I'm hoping that the word will spread and more people will look at these astonishing artifacts. And otherwise, yes, as you say, it's really a story in the making. And I think also what I think we're also trying to show in the exhibition is, how we view the past really has to do with where we are in the present, our present experiences. So I think, we'll see different things. The next generation will discover new finds, but we'll also see them differently from the way we do now.
That's the joy of culture.
The story continues.
It does, absolutely. Congratulations on the exhibition. I know how much work you all put into this, and as you say, major loans from all over the world to come here, especially Europe, to come here for this first ever exhibition in the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Susanne Ebbinghaus is the curator of ancient art at the Harvard Art Museums and one of the curators of Celtic art across the ages, which is on view at the Harvard Art Museums through August 2nd. Museum admission there is always free. Check out their website for more details and about the programming that we mentioned too, including the harpist. Coming up, putting on the spritz. Jackson Cannon, beverage director for ES Hospitality, is here to raise a glass to summer with some seasonal drinks. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Trade.
Huge responses from across Europe, from the Danish Prime Minister.
Climate.
Picture this all filled with ice.
Security.
Not only do we need to end the war, we also need to prevent the next war.
These are global issues, and to understand them, you need a global perspective. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Join us for The World each and every weekday.
This afternoon at 3 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting classical soloists, popular artists, and a week of programs curated by Yo-Yo Ma amid the Berkshire Hills at Tanglewood. More at tanglewood.org. And Native Plant Trust, presenting Garden in the Woods, the hidden jewel of Metro West, a botanic garden showcasing the beauty of native plants. More at nativeplanttrust.org. And the Museum of Fine Arts, with free admission on June 19th and 20th to celebrate Juneteenth and America at 250. Visitors can explore old favorites and new stories in reopened Art of the Americas galleries. More at mfa.org.
Listen to Morning Edition
Watch the Boston Public Radio live stream.
and get trusted local news all in one place. Download the GBH News app
On the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The weather is sizzling, the ice on reserve, and spritzes are bubbling up everywhere. Aperol, Campari, Vermouth, Amaro sparkling wine, the whole bright, bitter, fizzy family. Joining us to talk about what makes a good spritz, what belongs in the glass, and what he's pouring now is cocktail icon Jackson Cannon. He's been shaking up Boston's cocktail scene for years, first behind the bar at Eastern Standard, and now as beverage director of ES Hospitality, home to some of the city's most celebrated restaurants. On July 1st, you can experience the Summer of Spritz. Standard Italian is hosting a spritz dinner. Jackson Cannon, welcome back. It's great to see you.
Great to be here, Jared.
Well, it couldn't be a better day, given that it's so hot out and everybody could use a refreshing cocktail.
Yeah, somehow this is just such great drinking weather for anything, right? We did martinis in the middle of winter, and those would be good today out of the freezer as well.
Yes, they would be.
But it being the Summer of Spritz, I'm really excited to make you a couple of our offerings today.
Well, before we get into the making, I say we, it's you doing all the work. Why have we come to associate spritzes with summer and sun-soaked glamour? And what is it about the cocktail?
There's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, and they're not necessarily rooted in its 19th century history of in the Veneto in northern Italy during the influence of the Austrian Empire. The occupying forces found the wines a little stronger than what they were used to, and so they they utilized a practice that's been used in many different ways over history to kind of water down the wine just a little bit, right? And spritz is sort of kind of the word that got attached to that practice. But like everything, like once that got started, it had its own kind of energy. And by the 1920s, when Select Aperitivo was created, you had this kind of like spritz culture evolving that was bringing sparkling wines and waters into the other wines and other ingredients. And then, flash forward to the 2000s when the Aperol Spritz just sort of broke the world with its kind of chic bit of day drinking culture. I'd say like that's probably like the mechanical appeal of these drinks, right? Is they're a little lower in alcohol and they're super refreshing. So it's sweltering out. You want a little alcohol, but you need a lot of water to go with it. And you want to kind of start in the fresh air drinking and make it through the night. Spritz is just so ideal for that. That's no surprise to me that it's become kind of this ubiquitous, great, I'm not getting wasted, but I'm having a great time cocktail,
Well, I love this bookend to starting off the show with Dorie Greenspan and her spin on brownies. What's been your spin on spritzes?
Well, that's the thing is like once it's developed and done a certain way for a long enough time, there tends to be like orthodoxy around it, and it's like this is the order you have to put it in, and these are the ingredients that you have to use, and this is what you should call it. And I chafe against all that. The American aspect of cocktails just sort of refutes that on its face. We're going to be tinkering with it. We're going to be adding what's at hand. We're going to be attaching fanciful names to it and using evocative new ingredients. So that's kind of, what always brings me to the table with cocktails. And certainly that's kind of what animates our Summer of Spritz energy at Standard Italian, Eastern Standard, in equal measure right now.
Which, again, we're just getting surface here, but people can experience more of that with you on July 1st. Well, speaking of table, you have your bar cart right next to you, our Culture Show bar cart, that is. So what's the first drink
I do.
you're
Well,
making?
the first one's going to highlight both the tradition of using an ingredient like Select Aperitivo that maybe people won't associate with the Spritz as much as Aperol, but the Venetians will tell you it's the original, but then messing with it kind of the way that we do. This is on the menu at Standard Italian, and I'm going to start with a half an ounce of lemon juice. And one of the cool things about spritzes too is they work really well just sort of built in the glass. And so this is something that you don't need a lot of specialized gear for. I like to have something that I can reliably measure with. But once you kind of know what the stuff looks like in your glass, you can kind of crank these out at home without really doing too much to it. This is just a very simple sort of 1-to-1 strawberry syrup.
So lemon and strawberry.
And it's just something I like to do this time of year. Strawberries were so good, and kind of a little overripe fruit makes the best syrups. We use a touch of salt when we make this and a little bit of lemon peel to kind of give it that zing. And then we're going to do 2 ounces of the Select Aperitivo, and this is kind of the common amount you would get in a Select Spritz or that you would get in an Aperol Spritz. This part of it is...
So what's the difference between Select and Aperol?
So it's just a different flavor profile. They're about the same ABV. I'd say that there's it's a little bit more kind of a fruit forward, and a touch of kind of a cool herbal bite in the Select that makes it fun to mix with. But Aperol, there kind of is no substitute. Although all kinds of brands make something like that. It's just the balance of that is really kind of on its own, sort of really easy to mix with. So once I've got those in the glass, I want to add a little bit of sparkling water.
So not even Prosecco necessarily.
Well, this is to start. I'm going to use both.
I'm getting ahead.
I use both in all of them.
And I should point out to people, this is a good moment if you have the opportunity to watch our YouTube stream as well, because you'll see that for the first time, I think, since you've been here, you haven't brought a cocktail shaker, and you are, as you say, making this in the glass. Couldn't be simple.
I brought a spoon that I might not even need to use, right? So now that you can actually see, if you take a kind of a quick peek, soda water's gone in there, and everything's kind of the release of the carbonation's sort of mixing that together a little bit. So that's why I did that before I put any ice in. And then I'm going to get a scoop of ice.
I never thought of that the soda water could do the mixing for you, just the bubbles.
And that's a fun way to make an old-fashioned. I'll do that for us sometime this fall maybe. We'll show how you can kind of muddle the sugar into an old-fashioned, and the soda water really helps you do that. Okay, so a little bit of ice now I'm in there. And I open this off air. I'm sorry. I wanted to spare us the potential damaging drama of spraying all over your board. Yes, you guys are welcome in the booth.
And I get very nervous when I have coffee anywhere near the board in front of me.
And they're going to love when I pass this to you, I know. But I thought, at least I can open this in the hallway. So, because I did travel with this bottle of sparkling wine. And we use Prosecco in Standard Italian. I brought a bottle of Cava today because it's what I use at Eastern Standard. And I thought one bottle was enough to do both of the spritzes. The flavor profile is not that different. They're both kind of method champenois, so done in the champagne style. And they're a little bit more kind of affordable, and they're just sort of like, there's a lot of nuance in, say, you wouldn't make a drink like this and use vintage champagne. You'd just be sort of losing the nuance, but also affecting the drink in a way that you're not looking for. So now you can see that's actually pretty well mixed, and anyone can do that at home. It's pretty easy. I'm going to make sure you've got a straw.
And not a lot of alcohol, so I can take a bigger sip than normal.
Yes, you can. And then just for garnish, I've done a few little strawberry hearts right before I came in. And those will be a nice snack when you get to the bottom of the glass. And just put a few in there.
And this did originate from Italy.
The spritz did originate in northern Italy, yes. Oh.
Northern, yeah, of course, by the Italian Riviera.
Yes.
All right. And why a straw? This is the first time we've done a straw.
It's just a little easier to kind of get around the whole thing with it, so.
Well, that is delicious and very refreshing. And it's the flavors, probably with your strawberry and lemon, I can taste the difference from Aperol. So it becomes a little more complicated. Not complicated sounds terrible, but a little more nuanced.
Yes, and you can see like the herbaceousness of the Select behind the fruit and the citrus. So that's a really fun one. I like that a lot.
Do you have favorites with cocktails? Is this one of your favorites when summertime rolls around? You were just saying as you walked in that summer is your favorite season.
You know, I know this is going to sound like I'm being a little bit of a jerk, but like my favorite thing to do is get somebody in a drink that they'll enjoy. Yes, I have my own personal taste from time to time, but they're pretty varied. Like my taste in music, it's like my Spotify algorithm doesn't really know what to do with me. Well, same with my palate, you know. There's kind of a time and a season for everything. And yeah, I'm not going to be necessarily, I don't know, I'm not chugging a heavy glass of red wine on the drive home in this weather,
no.
Right? Like I'm more apt to pour a cider over the rocks, right? So, but kind of understanding one's own personal taste is only the beginning. It's understanding that everybody has these different tastes and understanding what the application is. That's always really interested me, right? So I'm looking at you, seeing when you taste that, hey, do your eyes really go wide? Like, are you just being polite, or did I get it right? Did I get the drink that you would enjoy? And that's really what animates me and motivates me in working with cocktails. And so that's kind of how I think about it. So.
For people just tuning in, I'm speaking with Jackson Cannon, the beverage director of ES Hospitality, which includes Eastern Standard, Equal Measure, and Standard Italian in the Fenway, which is where, on July 1st, you can experience the Summer of Spritz at Standard Italian. Tickets at Open Table and reservations at Open Table. I'm curious with the spritzes about appearance, because I don't think we've ever really talked about this before, but you think of those great photos and posters of the French Riviera, the Italian Riviera, and again, we're going back to the glamour of the spritz. So how much of it is about the look, too? This is a very pretty cocktail in addition to everything else.
Right. Well, it reminds me of a time when the craft cocktail was emerging and the very beginning of people's affection for the Aperol Spritz. And there were a lot of bars that weren't plating cocktails, say, in a wine glass, right, at that time. And so you would get an Aperol Spritz in a highball. And I've made a few of them that way myself, and it just sort of feels like a completely different experience, right? It's true that first we eat with our eyes. We talked about that in the context of how other drinks have looked. But then we also have all of these other associations, right? So the lush color of the spritz, the fresh fruit floating around in it, the big presentation, like that makes us feel a certain way. I remember in the kind of, we have a thing called bartender's choice when you try to put somebody in a drink. They say you choose, but then you ask them a series of questions about spirits and refreshing and whatever. And I remember once going down this rabbit hole with somebody and they couldn't really say. They just were like, I don't know what spirit, I don't know. And I finally said, hey, when you were getting ready tonight and you were thinking about coming out to the bar and you were going to have a drink, what did the glass look like in your mind's eye?
That's a great question.
And that told me what they were looking for from their experience in the bar, right, Jared? And so and that was my way in. It was like they saw themselves as a character in, like a Sex and the City episode, or they thought themselves kind of a Mad Men type, and I've asked people their favorite movie star, their favorite movie, their favorite song, and they all kind of give you a context, and that's really what we're doing. We're in a social context, and the drinks fit that role. And you're just so right that the look of a spritz, right? It's giving all of this content to the experience.
And again, you have the association, as you say, the memory experience you bring. We have just about a few minutes left. So what's the second cocktail?
Oh, I thought your other segment finished early. I was filibustering. So let me make you with a select spritz. This is just briefly, this is a really fun kind of exciting new product. It's a clarified cocktail of its own in a bottle. So long and short of that, it's washed in such a way that it has this kind of great texture and all these great flavors. There's sort of green and black tea pushing against pear notes. In a lot of ways, it reminds me a bit of how Saint Germain can act as a bit of a chameleon, put it with different ingredients and see different things coming out of the Rockies botanical. And let's see let's make sure I do this. Oh yes, we're gonna start with the yuzu curacao. This begins its life as an orange curacao and has yuzu flavor added to it. It's by our friends at Maison Ferrand. And I'm going to do just a half ounce of that.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
So yuzu is a fruit, and curacao is an orange liqueur named for the island of Curacao where the kind of original sour orange liqueur comes from. Think of them also as the family of triple sec that include Cointreau.
Yep.
And they're a great rounding influence in drinks as far-ranging as the margarita to the Pegu Club. They're just oranges, bitters are used in a lot of cocktails, and this is both the sweetener and that. We use OJ that's citric acid adjusted, and the reason we do that is that you'll notice when you drink orange juice for breakfast, there's all kinds of experiences, right? Some days it's sort of and I'm going to do just a half ounce of that. Some days it's tart and bitter. Some days it's lush and fruity. And then by just filtering and acid adjusting the OJ, it behaves the same way in the cocktail every time for us. And then I'm going to use an ounce of the Rockies.
Well, of course, some are, again, great for this because this is such a fruit-forward cocktail that some of the great fruits are in season right now, or coming into season right now. Not that we can't get them all time of year.
Yeah, well, we're out of citrus season, which is kind of also like a weird note, but we're into a season where we use a lot of citrus because it's refreshing. And that is just something that can't really be, it's a paradox of modern bars.
I guess I was looking at your strawberry and thinking that's certainly coming, and blueberries, of course.
Yes. And you'll see that on our spritz menu. Like you'll get a lot. We'll get watermelon, we'll get blueberry soon. In the fall, we'll have apricot, apple, pear. So I did the same trick with a little bit of soda water. Now I'm going to add ice.
Well, again, this is a perfect day, and for people tuning in, I'm speaking with Jackson Cannon. We only have about 1:45 left, but we're going to have to chug this one.
I wanted to say a couple of things. If you're not doing anything Monday, we've got a pierogi pop-up at Eastern Standard, and I'm featuring a bunch of rosés on that, so that's going to be a hoot. And then if you miss the Summer of Spritz on the 1st, on the 4th of July, we're barbecuing out on the terrace.
Oh, fabulous.
And I'll probably have the blenders out there, if you know what I'm saying. But
there'll
be plenty of spritzes as well. So I'm topping with the sparkling cava. And I'm going to add a little dehydrated orange wheel, which is something we're able to have preserved. I'll get you a straw.
And again, what did you call this one?
This is the Rocky Spritz.
The Rocky
Eastern
Spritz.
Standard. And as they play us off, enjoy, my friends.
We have just enough time to close the show, take a drink, and get ready to go out into this very hot weather. I've been here since 7:30 this morning. Is it really hot out there?
You're gonna feel better if you finish that before you go out there.
Okay, I'm gonna take a
Cheers.
sip. As you read my face, that's really delicious. Yeah. I mean, they're completely different drinks, both great. And that flavor continues. Jackson Cannon, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you soon for the next one.
I hope so.
Season by season, Jackson Cannon is the beverage director of ES Hospitality, which includes Eastern Standard, Equal Measure, and Standard Italian in the Fenway. On July 1st, you can experience the Summer of Spritz at Standard Italian, which is hosting a Spritz dinner. You can get reservations and tickets at Open Table. And of course, check out the 4th of July as well. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. We'll talk about everything from Alamo Drafthouse requiring phone use to Trump being trumped with the Kennedy Center. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first, the world. A global view of today's headlines from the World Newsroom. Right here on GBH 89.7.
Detective Alexa Crow investigates the death of a young teacher at a tango club and finds herself in a dangerous dance to discover the truth. But who is leading who? Find out on My Life is Murder tonight at 8 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Learn something new.
I want to start with how crowds of people can act like fluids.
Yes.
What?
I mean, this is physics, so I love it.
Make a connection.
I have no idea who they voted for. I don't care. This tailgate in particular, everybody's welcome.
Dig a bit deeper.
We're often looking for a small secular liturgy for our lives, and poetry can provide that sometimes.
Stay curious with All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Hey there, it's Marco with a quick note. Just a reminder that The World is an independent, nonprofit newsroom. We are better off when you are there to support us. I'll cut to the chase. We need your help. Visit theworld.org/give to keep our global reporting going strong.